As is always the case, we have efforted a fun show for you today. Gordy Chiesa stops by in about half an hour. Jarom Jordan, I'm really, really curious how our conversation is going to go with Jarom Jordan because, BYU TV probably has multiple sources, some of them conflicting with one another in regards to the Kalani Sitake flirtation with Penn State. I say that he's probably got multiple sources because I spoke with no less than 6 people yesterday about, I should say people who I think are relatively informed about, what the expectation is. There was the classic hashtag team meeting. Closed doors. Keep it in-house, boys. Team meeting up on the Hill at the University of Utah. Team meeting down in Provo. I think we're talking about a transition of power potentially in both of those situations. Depending on which sources you pay attention to, Kalani is either 99% gone, Witt is either 99% gone, or both of them are going to happily be coaching their teams next year. How wild is that? That as BYU prepares itself for a conference championship game against a formidable Texas Tech Red Raider squad that truly looks like one of the best teams in the country this year, the storyline is not, hey, how does Aaron Roderick scheme up against this defense that has been so consistently good, especially against the run, which is where BYU with LJ Martin has been able in these most recent weeks to really make their hay. And obviously the QB run game with Bear Bachmeier as well. That's not the conversation today. The conversation, oddly enough, is not even, hey, what's going to happen with Utah? It's, is Kalani Sitake really going to go to Penn State? And we don't have a better answer now than yesterday. I don't have a better answer today than yesterday about whether or not we're going to get an announcement this week from the Utah Athletic Department. Now, I'm of the opinion that the decision is made. I would not be surprised if people were told in no uncertain terms yesterday at that team meeting that, like, hey, guys, let's do it together one more time in this bowl game. Let's practice right. Let's prepare right. Let's help the coaches out with recruitment and getting these guys across the finish line in the National Signing Day, which sneaks up on us a little bit. Guess when that is, James Peterson, who's producing Behind the Glass today. The early signing period in high school football recruiting opens when?
That's February, right? Oh, no. Early. The actual signing day. Yeah, that's tomorrow, right?
It's tomorrow. I mean, I think most of these guys were brought in into the Utah class with the assumption and the understanding that at some point during their tenure, they had to be comfortable playing for Morgan Scalley and not just Kyle Whittingham. We were told in the sort of odd offseason that Utah had last year that there was kind of a, hey, these conversations with coordinators, people auditioning for that new job, they're going to be collaborative. They being Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, they're going to be collaborative in making the right decision for the program. And obviously that has to be the case with what's going on in college football and the high school recruiting window opening right now. You have to be relatively transparent with recruits about, the possibilities of what they're facing. And it's one of the many reasons why I really admire what how Kalani has handled this situation down in Provo. Because he's been asked point blank, he's been asked indirectly, and when he was asked, when he's sitting at a podium in front of a microphone, hey, what are you saying to your team about this Penn State stuff? Instead of just going like, oh, we're focused on Texas Tech, which they are, and he did say that. He said, look, you have to address it with them because they see it. He doesn't have to tell us what exactly he said to his team, but pretending that he doesn't need to address it with kids and families, and by the way, businesses that are making decisions potentially based on his presence or not.
You mean like Crumble?
Like Crumble. Great reference. I'm sure a lot of you saw this. The Crumble CEO loves himself a little 15 minutes of fame. The CEO of Crumble Cookies likes to get active and put himself in front of a camera and likes to be associated with BYU athletics. And guess what? I don't hate it as a marketing strategy. All right? He tweeted what? Time for me to get off the sidelines. Some people are not replaceable. Time for me to get off the sidelines.
Because he's the reason. I mean, he's obviously a very wealthy man, so it's not ridiculous for him to say I can be a big part of him staying here. But like the audacity of like, yeah, well, until I got off the sidelines.
Oh wait, that bat signal that went up, that's in the shape of a Crumble cookie.
That's with a little bite.
A little bite out of it. It's the Crumble logo. Is the bat signal that he saw sent up out of the BYU athletic department.
By the way, what does Utah State athletics think about this? Because isn't Crumble all over Mavericks Stadium?
Didn't it start in Logan?
Because it's a cash like Utah's. Like, come on, Jason. I thought you were one of us.
You know what? Here's the thing. It's easy to make fun of, but I will say this. When you can, you attach yourself to the bigger thing that you're associated with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
he clearly is.
I'm guilty of this, right?
Yeah.
Nobody cares that I played for Weber State. I actually played for Weber State, right? I was actually on the field contributing for Weber State. When it was time to get a radio job, I wasn't touting my Weber State time. I was like, no, I was on that Utah football team that did great things, right? So you tie yourself to the thing that is a bigger deal for the public. So I'm not going to hate on the Crumble CEO, even though like people can make fun of me for that. I'm totally fine with you doing it, and I will, in my own head, make fun of like, come on, bud. If you're not a BYU Coug, well,
he clearly is a BYU fan.
Big honk, yeah.
Even though he's from Cache Valley, and so he's leveraged that. Hey, we started in Cache Valley to be a big sponsor of Utah State too. But anyway,
there's nothing wrong with either of those things.
Nothing wrong with that.
And by the way, this is exactly what I was talking about yesterday when I said, and I will reiterate it. In fact, I will triple down on this because I was listening to Spence yesterday. I was listening to other radio. I was listening to national radio yesterday. And this Penn State Kalani Sitake story is now on that level. You go to the front page of ESPN.com right now, and it's Sitake is the number one target for Penn State. And what people talk about, at least one of the many points that people bring up is, well, if Penn State is offering Curt Cignetti money, who, by the way, Indiana, masterclass, well done. The fact that Curt Cignetti's name never even got close to being involved in the mess of the college football coaching carousel after the job he's done at Indiana these past 2 seasons is a master class in personnel management from an athletic department. Because all they had to do, and this is foresight, by the way, is seemingly the trait or skill that is most absent from people in college athletics leadership. A lot of smart people, they can figure out a lot of things, but for some reason, the predictive abilities of people that are in decision-making roles in athletic departments and in college sports in general seems to be hampered. There seems to be some kind of retardant that has forced them to have a blind spot for the future. Not at Indiana. Indiana was just like, wow, we have one of the best coaches in the country. Look what he is doing with Hoosier football. I don't want Penn State to ever think that he will come there. I don't want Ohio State if Ryan Day moves on to the NFL or something crazy like that. I don't want LSU or Alabama or any of these big-time programs to say, you know what, this Curt Cignetti guy is a great option for us. So what did they do? They backed up a Brinks truck that none of us even knew they had for football. They put it right in front of his house. And you know the dump trucks, they have that hydraulic thing that lifts up the bed?
Yeah.
And then it just takes, like, you got to, like, poke it with a rake or something, and the whole load of grass clippings will fall out the back. That's my vision of how it happened for Curt Cignetti. Indiana, dump truck, full of dollar bills in the back, and they just backed it into his driveway. Beep, beep, beep. They open the doors, and there's just a pile of cash flooding out onto his driveway. They did that before anybody thought that they needed to. And because of that, Cignetti's name is nowhere near any of this, and nobody else was able to artificially drive his price up, although that was something that Indiana was just like, look, we're going to pay for it now. His agent did a good job and said, look, someone's going to come with a $12 million offer in the offseason. How about you give him 11.5 and we'll call it good right now, right? And again, they got out ahead of it. BYU didn't know this was coming, and if they did know it was coming, would they have been as proactive as Indiana? I can't tell you one way or another. But I said it on the show yesterday, and I will quadruple down on it today. If BYU, like many of the national conversations are bringing up, I mean, Barstool's talking about it. Dave Portnoy, weirdly enough.
Did you see his quote tweet? Speaking of the crumble tweet, he quote tweeted it, and hilarious.
Yeah, he decided that this is like something near and dear to his heart now.
Provo Dave.
By the way, if I'm in the athletic department at BYU, you know who I'm calling and saying, hey, you want to give us a little extra cash to keep Kalani here? I'm calling Dave Portnoy. Because the worst thing you can do is say no. And he's kind of put himself he does all these weird unconventional marketing things anyway. You think Dave Portnoy would not love how many clicks he gets on I just gave the Mormons $1 million to keep Kalani Sitake in Provo.
It would definitely be third person. He would, because he's doing the Provo Dave brand with he'd say Provo Dave just gave
Provo Dave just handed BYU a bunch of money, and he would play it up, and it would be,
and he said free swig for everyone.
It'd probably be worth it for him. So if you got to get creative, but this is what I was talking about yesterday when the crumble cookie guy, without being asked, as far as we know, goes, all right, guys, I'm going to get off the sidelines and I'm going to take care of this. That's what I was talking about when I said BYU has access to money that other programs don't. And if the finances are what's standing in the way of wanting to keep Kalani Sitake, then that's irresponsible in my mind, because the finances are not an issue at BYU. It's a private institution. It's just like at USC. The finances are not an issue. They're not. We know, and I'm to avoid the same kind of backlash I got yesterday, I'm not saying that your fast offerings and tithing money is going to Kalani Sitake, but I am saying that BYU, through its vast, dedicated, passionate, and successful fan base, and by the holdings and business ownings and profitability of companies that are either officially or unofficially associated with the grand institution that BYU also serves, the money is there. If you want to hand it out to Kevin Young, nobody questioned, nobody batted an eye when Kevin Young came in with an initial salary that was more than double what Mark Pope had. Dave Rose never sniffed the kind of money that Craig Young is getting. Not even close. And nobody was just like, where's this money coming from? Everyone's just like, oh, well, yeah, of course, because the Jazz guy. All right, so you think that there's not 10 dudes that love BYU football that are able to do the same thing? If you're in that athletic department and you're saying, I don't know if we can pay that price, at BYU, you're asking yourself the wrong question. You can pay that price. Absolutely, you can. Are you willing to? Do you think you can get Jay Hill and the same results at a discount? And I was yelling at my radio yesterday driving around because national guys were saying, like, well, I think, Kalani Sitake would be good at Penn State, and they got a good thing going in Yeah, you got a good thing going in Provo because of how Kalani mastered this very, very delicate balance. And you juxtapose it against what's happening at Utah right now, And it's the same reason, to a lesser extent, but it's the same reason why if you are among the fans out there who are like, well, the right thing to do, even though we love Morgan Scalley, the right thing to do is to like have a national search here. No, Utah is such a unique job for different reasons than BYU, obviously. But it is such a unique job, and it is something that you have to have a deep understanding of. And if you're not a Morgan Scalley type character, you are going to use Utah as a stepping stone job. We've gotten so spoiled on the idea that Kyle Whittingham wanted to stay and never wanted to move his family and never wanted to scatter the whole clan into the winds and wasn't going to move all the kids out with him and all the grandkids out with him. So he stayed because he knew he could do great things at the University of Utah. He understood what it takes. He understands what it takes to recruit here. And by the way, you got 16 commits expected to sign on the dotted line tomorrow because of that understanding. These are unique jobs. BYU even more so than Utah, certainly. But they are incredibly unique jobs. And when you're having these team meetings and you're telling guys about your plans for the future or what you think the direction of the program might be heading forward, you have to understand how that resonates with kids who either have come from out of town to play at Utah or come from out of town to play at BYU, or I think of equal importance and maybe more importance, of the local guys who now all had options to go elsewhere. With the exception, I guess, of like Jackson Benny, every important Utah player that is a local also had options to go play at Oregon, at UCLA, at Colorado, at whatever. And these guys chose to stay local partly because the coaches at these institutions understand them, the culture they come from. They understand the family dynamics that these people come from. They understand how it's harder to do it at Utah and BYU than it is to do it at USC. And you made these young guys believe, despite those truths, you know what? I'm going to stay. I'm talking about the Fanos. How much money do you think Spencer Fano turned down to finish out his career under Jim Harding?
Wasn't it reported, or was this just rumor and innuendo, like $3 million from Oregon?
I mean,
or millions, certainly, from Oregon.
Wouldn't surprise me. Like,
right?
That's why I say, how much do you think? I mean, we've all heard these crazy numbers, right? And the number I most commonly hear that he is making from the University of Utah is in like the 1.5 range. It's not really our business, but it kind of is. Okay. 1.5. I promise you he can get more than that. If he's going to win the Outland Trophy this year, I promise you he could have gotten more than that from a half dozen schools or more around the country. He stayed because of a belief in this. And if you don't value it as an athletic department, you don't value that as an athletic director, and I'm talking, I guess, indirectly to Brian Santiago, like and everyone else who helps support his decisions or questions his decisions. If you look at what Kalani has gradually built at BYU, while having to balance out all of it, right? And I don't need to say what all of it is, but you all know what all of it is when we're talking about a BYU job. He's having to balance it. He's standing on a basketball. In one hand, he has a soccer ball with a tennis ball on top of it. And in the other hand, he's got like a hockey stick with a baseball on top of that hockey stick. And he's just balancing all of it. And it took time to be able to do that comfortably. And there's people who are just like, oh, yeah, well, let him go. Get Jay Hill at a discount, and you're fine. What does that discount do for you? It doesn't do anything for you, right? What, the crumble cookie guy likes you more because you're asking less money of him every year? Doesn't do anything for you as an athletic department. If you're winning, and Kalani will continue to win, all right? If you're winning, all those guys are going to open up their checkbooks, and they're going to keep writing those checks, and they're going to do it with a smile on their face. And the question for BYU should be answered with that. The question at Utah is, will that smile stay on people's faces when the transition happens inevitably this year, next year, 2 years, whatever, if there are growing pains, do those smiles stay on the face? And now let's flip it back to BYU. Let's say you do let Kalani walk because you're afraid of asking for an extra $3 million a year or whatever he's asking for. Or you don't want to give him 8 years on the contract. You only want to give him 5. Or somebody, the university president, whoever that person reports to, somebody says, guys, we can't be seen splashing money on athletics like this. This is not the look we're going for. Well, wait a second. We did it for basketball. All right, never mind. Let's say you let him walk, and then you have growing pains, right? And I think Jay Hill would be a really good coach at BYU. This is not about Jay. This is about how much I believe in what Kalani has done, including bringing in Jay Hill, who was already a head coach elsewhere. Let's say Jay takes over and Jay has an 8-win season. After back-to-back 11-plus win seasons, I say plus because I think BYU could get at least one more this year. Back-to-back 11-win seasons or better for Kalani Sitake. Are you now, crumble cookie guy, looking at it and going, yep, that was the right decision. I'll still support this program the same way I did when I got myself off the sidelines? Frugality, when it is necessary, is, in my opinion, an admirable trait. Frugality for the sake of frugality, where you end up sacrificing quality because of it, I am more guilty of this than any person that you know. I am a cheap ass, all right?
Clipped it. That's gonna be a drop now.
When it comes to spending money, it's funny, James, because I've always congratulated myself. I've always patted myself on the back for being good with money because I don't spend unnecessarily. I don't splash cash. Even when I'm doing well in life, I save my money. I've always patted myself on the back for putting me and my family in a good financial situation. But guess what? I have read some stuff recently, and I've had some conversations more recently in my life, that just because you're cheap doesn't mean you're good with money. Frugality or cheapness for the sake of only that sometimes means that the remodel you paid for on your house, the workmanship is lower quality.
Yeah, you get what you paid for, right? That saying is also true in a lot of cases.
It's so true, and it's so painfully true in the case of the remodel on my house. Okay?
Is that a conversation you had about the remodel in particular?
Goodness. James, it's the most obvious example, right? But if you can afford something not fancier, because fancy to me is just you don't need fancy, but
higher quality, right?
If you can afford to eat a steak and potatoes meal instead of going to McDonald's, you should. It's healthier. It's better for you. It's higher quality food. And you don't need to save the $12 or whatever it is. You don't need to. Now, could you use it for something else? Yeah, sure. But to be frugal or miserly or pinch pennies based on principle alone makes zero sense for really any athletic department, but especially for BYU's athletic department right now.
When you sort of touched on this, I think also frugality for appearances' sake is also foolish in BYU's case, because we heard after the AJ Bonsa stuff and the Rob Wright stuff, they paid, AJ Bonsa's a multimillionaire because of BYU donors. Rob Wright, I think, making a little over $1 million to come from Baylor to here. And what did they all say that we made fun of both here and on Spence's show? Well, we're never going to be the one that outbids everybody.
We're not going to be the highest bidder.
We're not going to be the highest bidder. That's it. So the frugality, just to give this appearance of, hey, we are not driven by money like everybody else in the world, is also very foolish. So probably even more foolish than frugality for frugality's sake.
You're right. And it's something, by the way, that feels disingenuous.
Absolutely.
From especially an institution that is trying to perpetually prove over and over and over and over how earnestly they mean what they say. Like, BYU, rightfully so, puts its money where its mouth is on a lot of the like Christian principles and the teaching stuff more than most universities, even more than Notre Dame, more than SMU, like more than TCU. In a lot of these cases, they are like a shining example of charity and Christian values, and that's something that they should be praised for, and they should, if they want, pat themselves on the back for. To me, it makes no sense that they feel it's necessary to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not the splash cash and types. We're not going to be the highest bidder. It's like, but you were the highest bidder. No, they wanted to come here because this place is special. Yeah. The place is special, but it's also full of money. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You know what?
Yeah.
Disney World is a special place. It's also ridiculously expensive and disgustingly profitable. But we still take our kids there because they get the smile on the face. They get to believe they're a princess for a day, whatever. It doesn't mean, like, you can have your cake and eat it too in this case. You can, and I know the prosperity gospel is not something that is a cornerstone of the LDS faith, thank goodness. But it's also not something to be embarrassed about. If you have passionate, rich fans that want to use their businesses or their personal incomes or their whatever to support your athletics and to keep what I think are like proven assets in the program, and I'm talking about Kalani Sitake here, but Bear Bachmeier's price goes up after this year too, drastically. Do you think Notre Dame, Bear Bachmeier was raised Catholic, do you think Notre Dame would rather have C.J. Carr or have Bear Bachmeier after this year?
C.J. Carr's been all right, but they probably would rather have Bear Bachmeier. Yeah.
When you talk about upside, when you talk about true freshman potential, all that kind of stuff, like you think it's not something to be embarrassed about, and it is what Utah athletics is up against right now, that the full weight of a very fired up fan base that has a lot of money. And my hope from a Utah lens is that they do step on their own tails here. I'll say tails. They do step on their own tails here.
Cougar tails.
And they say, Kalani is not the reason. We're going to let him go. Did you see the poll I put up on Twitter yesterday after our show?
Wild.
At Real OC Sports, I asked the question publicly yesterday on Twitter, who is more responsible? Who gets more credit for BYU's recent success? Who is the reason? Jay Hill or Kalani Sitake? 61% ultimately said it's Kalani. Jay Hill, who is one of the best assistant coaches on the planet, is a man who deserves all the praise that he gets and probably more, at one point was leading this poll.
Yeah.
By a non-insignificant margin. Jay at one point was like 55-45. He's the reason why BYU is successful as the defensive coordinator. I think we could count on one hand how many times the success of a team truly belongs to one coordinator over the head coach. I'm thinking LSU's national championship year with Joe Burrow as the best example I can come up with.
Yeah, Joe Brady.
Joe Brady was kind of the dude. That was the generationally great offense.
Yeah.
And Ed Orgeron didn't really sustain the greatness after that. But I don't want to get too far afield here. If BYU athletics can't get this thing done with Kalani, and as far as I can tell, 2 nights ago, what was that? That was Monday night? No, Sunday night.
Sunday night.
Sunday night, he was gone. Monday, he was back. Monday night, after the meeting, he's gone again. As far as I can tell, Tuesday, he's back. For Utah athletics, if they let him go, it's a great thing for you, because in the best case scenario, it dilutes the on-field talent and the coaching talent at BYU. Even if Jay Hill takes over and Jay Hill elevates a bunch of assistants or brings in a bunch of guys that he worked with previously at Weber State or whatever else, he'll do a great job. He really will. If Gary Anderson doesn't go to Penn State with Kalani, Gary Anderson stays at BYU to be the defensive coordinator while Jay's the head coach. Like, Gary's a great coordinator, right? I mean, the path to success is there still, but you've taken this super team of coaches and you've diluted it if you split them up. And then the on-field talent thing, you think Penn State's not going to offer Bear Bachmeier more than BYU?
When you think that Kalani's not going to be in Bear's ear every day, every minute of every day to be like, hey, they want you here. I want you at Penn State. The donors want you at Penn State. Come to Penn State. Like, come on.
You think Aaron Roderick is going to say, I'd rather stay at BYU, I think, because they're not paying their offensive coordinator at BYU what they would pay the offensive coordinator at Penn State.
Right. I mean, the money thing is it. Money thing's huge, even though, like you just spent this whole segment saying it should not be that big of a gap between BYU and the other big brands in college football. It has been, though. That's a reality that you got to grip with if you're a Cougar fan, if you're invested in BYU football.
And by the way, another thing, and this will be my last point on it, if you're BYU and you recognize that you have a top 10, top 15, top whatever coach in the country right now, you have to look around and you have to see what every other program that feels like they have a top 10, top 15, top 25 coach in the program has done. You have to look around and see what every other program that's in that situation, that has a guy that they really like and they want to stay, you have to see what they have done. Every single program that feels like they found the right guy has doubled down and has extended that person, has given them more years, has given them more money, and has acknowledged that this is the most difficult and most complicated time in all of college football to be successful on a consistent basis. Vanderbilt saw what Clark Lee did these last 2 years and were just like, you're never leaving.
Yeah, even Vanderbilt did.
Vanderbilt did it. Indiana did it.
Even Indiana did it.
If you're BYU and you don't do it,
man,
you are failing.
By the way, breaking news. Kalani Sitake's Wikipedia page, according to a screenshot on Twitter, now has him as head coach of Penn State. A Penn State fan has updated his Wikipedia page.
Wikipedia.
So that's official.
Oh, Wikipedia is so lawless because of that.
So that's official. He's the Penn State head coach now because it's on Wikipedia.
All right. All right. Taking a quick one here. We'll come back. We'll talk with Gordy Chiesa on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792 on FM. We welcome Gordy Chiesa, courtesy of our friends at Aladdin Industries, your Utah Velux dealer. Gordy, welcome again. How are you, sir?
Sean, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. Felt like a long, long weekend, but that's exactly what we needed. Utah Jazz with a victory over the Rockets. How much of this was the Jazz making adjustments from the Sunday game, and how much of it was the Rockets just coming out lackluster?
Jazz made adjustments. It was more them. The Jazz outscored them differential between Sunday and Monday by 36 points. So they lose 28 points on Sunday, and they win by 8, so a 36-point differential. The Jazz were ready to play, but the adjustments is that the Jazz moved the ball much better and had less turnovers, and that was the key to the game. And as shown last night's game was so impactful was the Jazz bench. They outscored and out-hustled the Rockets understudies 35-18. And all 5 guys off the bench for the Jazz were major contributors, including Kyle Filipowski, 12 points, Kevin Love, 11 points, Walter Clayton was great with 8 points and 6 assists and energy, and then Isaiah Collier with 3 and Bryce Sensabaugh with 1. And that was the game. Anthony George had a tremendous bounce-back game, but it was the Jazz bench that really took the contest over, and it made the Rockets struggle.
I love the effort from Ace Bailey on the defensive end in this game. And look, he's a very natural scorer at 19 years old. It feels like that part of basketball makes a lot of sense to him. Without overwhelming him as a rookie, are you working more on polishing that offensive side right now, or are you getting the defensive stuff that he's clearly very capable of to catch up with his natural offensive talents?
Defensively, including last night's 3 blocks as a help defender. And he did a nice job, him and Mihailuk, harassing Kevin Durant. Durant got going in the fourth quarter, but after that point, they slowed him down. And that was because they got up into Durant and made him shoot a lot of tough off-balance shots. And so Ace Bailey, his development as the Jazz go forward, and you mentioned before about being a natural scorer, now he has to keep improving, and he has as far as defensively, and that's usually starting with technique. In the NBA, just like in the NFL, technique is everything defensively, because you want to be able to use your hands legally versus just contact where it's a foul, and the ability to move your feet, twist, turn, change direction with superior footwork. And Ace is going to learn that, and last night was a good indication that he's capable of doing it.
So the Jazz continue to be a lot more pleasant to watch than some of us expected, and certainly a lot more than last year. What are you expecting from the stretch to come? It's on the road at Brooklyn in a couple of days and a little East Coast swing.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nets are struggling, so the Jazz should punch them in the face. So the Brooklyn Nets, they have one home victory, and that was last night. So they're 1-9 at home. Then they play the Knickerbockers in Madison Square Garden on Friday. So the calendar is Nets in Brooklyn on Thursday, Knicks in the Garden on Friday. Mini quick trip, 2 games. The Jazz hopefully will play well, but it starts with the Nets right now. So I expect the Jazz to really get after it and try to build on momentum. Now, I'm often asked this question, Sean, why do teams lose on the road? So I'll just give you quickly some points about why. Usually the talent gap versus the home team. The second thing is the discomfort of air travel, meaning sleep loss, fatigue, mood altering, and also different time zones. So despite having a charter flight, it all affects your biorhythms. And the next point about that is that your routine is differently on the road, where you're used to going at home, getting sleep, being with your loved ones, etc. On the road, it's the opposite, is that you have you're by yourself and with different people around you, and it does affect your routine. Last point about that, the home crowd noise and the intensity. Yes, it is a factor that the home in a control setting versus in a big outdoor stadium is that when a good team at home gets after you on the road, that's advantageous to the home team. And the last part about that is the shooting background. It's not in a big dome stadium, but you would like, say, March Madness, but it is a factor as far as the friendly rims for the home team and the visiting team shooting into a different, unfamiliar background into what? Different colors, meaning what? The background's different as far as color coordination, as far as in the building. It does affect you, not getting used to it, especially if it's a one game. In the playoffs, it's different. Eventually, you get used to it because you play a team 3-4 times in a playoff series. But if it's one and move on to the next game, it's a factor.
Gordy Chie is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things NBA. Dylan Brooks is one of those guys who's going to win awards for being everyone's least favorite. If he's not on your team, you probably hate him. But he had a great night and continued his trash talk, especially against LeBron, who he's never been afraid to go at.
Yeah, last night the Suns punched the Lakers for their first loss in 8 games to stop the 7-game win streak for the Lakers. Dylan Brooks has a career game, 33 points, 15 to 26 from the field, and you mentioned before about trash talking. And then Luka Doncic had 9 turnovers. And so Dylan Brooks got after LeBron and got after Luka Doncic, and it was successful. But in that game, though, last night in Colin Gillespie, a guy Sean was in the G League for 2.5 years, gets 28 points on the road, which is a career high. Trash talking is only good if you can back it up. And trash talking is a sign of street cred and respect. And Dylan Brooks is I'll call him villain number one, and he backed it up last night. And they've been feuding, him and the Lakers, the last 2 years ago when the Lakers punched the Bridges in the face when Dylan Brooks played for the Grizzlies. He tried to do that with LeBron, and LeBron responded. Sean, here's some other guys to think about that are master trash talkers over the years. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Kevin Garnett, Reggie Miller, Rasheed Wallace, Gary Payton, and presently Draymond Green and Anthony Edwards. And the common attribute is that all these guys can back it up with scoring ability, and they like playing the role of what? An adversary during games to get the crowd going as far as the crowd not liking them.
Gordy, did you ever get sucked into a little trash talk with a player on an opposing team when all those years on the bench or in all your years around the NBA? Did anyone ever get under your skin to where you were talking?
No, the answer is no. But Jerry Sloan did often. So he often, to say the least. Remember, Jerry has the most ever technical fouls in the history of basketball.
Yes.
Ever. And I saw 9/10 of them. I was involved in 9/10 of them. So these eyes and ears have seen a whole bunch of things. And so it was more the Jazz being so physical in a game that the star scorers would be crying to the referees. And that was part of it. And so they attempted to, intimidate, which is foolish. Fool's gold by them, either our players or the head coach. And that was, let's say it was nondescript because there's no way that we would ever be intimidated by an opposing team, ever. When I say ever, I mean take it to the bank, ever.
Gordy, what's wrong with the Clippers?
The pieces don't fit. The Clippers right now are 5-16. It's the worst 20-game start since 2010-11 season. So it's 15 years when the Clippers started that year 4-16. And even worse than that, do you realize that if the Clippers, for some crazy reason, Sean, pick in the lottery, that the next year's pick goes to the Thunder. The Thunder who are right now 20-1. And so that's how this NBA thing, as far as management, is absolutely critical. As far as when you trade for somebody or you trade assets or you trade future picks, that you never know for sure, but there's indicators. So the Clippers, basically, when I say the pieces don't fit, including with James Harden. I know he's scoring a lot of points, but he dramatically over dribbles in a game, and that affects the whole team bounce. And so they score the ball, but they're not defending, and they hardly have assist, minus James Harden, who dominates the ball. So what you want to do is always, you want to dominate the game without dominating the ball. And that's when you have a great team as far as free-flowing offensively, and they play really intense defense because everybody feels they're respected during the game. A huge factor, anytime with NBA players, they say subconsciously themselves during a game, how come my teammates don't respect me by giving me the ball in space? Or how come I'm the guy always getting in foul trouble because my teammates don't guard anybody? And then suddenly I'm always in foul trouble. I just described right now Ivica Zubac of the Clippers. He's always in foul trouble, not guarding his own man, trying to help defense. And so that's the reason why the Clippers right now are struggling. The Clippers right now are the second worst team in the West. And who would have thought that?
What's your list today, Gordy?
My list today is offensive-minded. It's a Jazz list. The most career regular season games of scoring 40 points or more in Utah Jazz history, career-wise. So how many 40-point games do you have wearing a Jazz uniform? It's really, I cut it off in a short list starting at 2. Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer, Jeff Malone, and John Drew all scored 40 points in a game twice in their career. Jordan Clarkson did it 3 times, and with Jordan Clarkson, with his 40-point games, remarkably, he did it all off the bench. So, Sean, this guy's he did it 3 times in Jazz uniform, 40 or more points in a game off the bench. Dal Griffith, Dr. Duncanstein, did it 4 times. Larry Marketing, the Finnish sharpshooter for the Jazz, he scored now 40 points or more 6 times in a Jazz uniform, including 3 times this year. He got 40 twice in an NBA game this year for the Jazz, and one time he got 50 against the Bulls in that tremendous Jazz victory back in November in double overtime. Donovan Mitchell, Spider, did it for the Jazz 9 times, 40 points or more. Third all-time. His nickname was Pistol Pete. Pete Maravich did it 24 times. Second all-time Jazz leader as far as most ever 40-point games is the mailman, Karl Malone. He did it 44 times.
Oof.
And the number 1 Jazz player to score 40 points or more in a Jazz uniform is Adrian Dantley. He did it 49 times, 40 points or more in different games.
Wow.
Presently, you get the feeling that Keontae George will be on this list very shortly in the future. That he'll get some 40-point games because of his dribble striking ability and also his streak shooting. So I'm looking forward to see Keontae George being on this list someday. So, Sean, think about it. 40 points or more, what are some of the attributes quickly? You need 1, range shooting touch. 2, muscle finishing. 3, mid-range pull-up converting. 4, superior foul shooting accuracy. 5, alpha dog personality. And 6, willing passes to give you the ball on time in space.
I think I've scored 40 points or so in my entire career of basketball, from elementary school through church ball, all of it. So these guys can do it in one game.
So you're a work in progress. You are. But also you're alpha dog personality. So you have some of these traits, attributes. You need some willing passing floor mates. That's what you need.
You know, I'm more of a Draymond Green, where I'm just getting under the skin of, well, actually both teams, my own team and the other team when I play basketball.
But speaking of scoring, though, a lot of times in a game, though, the ball finds you in a game when you have energy. It's almost, I can't explain. It's like Murphy's Law, Sean. But if you play defense and you're engaged in the physical part of the game, offensively, the ball finds you. Suddenly the ball comes to you on time, on target. The loose ball pops to you for you, a rainbow 3. Running the floor, I'm the guy wide open. Where the defense shifts over to stop the ball, I'm the guy getting that running dunk on your guy's noggin as the back defender. So if you play hard, usually only good things happen, and you usually score more.
Well, maybe I need to play harder next time I'm out on the basketball floor. Gordy, you're the man. Always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Stay well.
Gordy Chiesa, that conversation brought to you every single week, twice a week, by our friends at Aladdin Industries, your Utah Velux dealer. Sean O'Connell Show and a hot lunch coming next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792 on FM. Jerem Jordan's going to join us in like 5 minutes here. We have tickets to give away, a 4-pack to the University of Utah Running Utes facing off against Mississippi State at the Delta Center in the Salt Lake Showcase December 13th. That's not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. We're giving away a 4-pack of tickets. You know what? Let's do it right now. 877-353-0700. 877-353-0700. If you can tell me who led the Big 12 in passing yards this year. 877-353-0700. If you have the correct answer to that question, who led the Big 12 conference in passing yards, the quarterback, not the team. 877-353-0700.
Bert Ficklin.
It's not Bert Ficklin.
Oh, okay.
He didn't throw a lot, James.
By the way, did you know that he had he wound up, speaking of Bird, he wound up with 10 rushing touchdowns this year.
I mean, he was brought in to score rushing touchdowns. That's kind of like, how many rushing attempts did he have? Like 50? Probably scored one of every 5 times he touched the ball.
Yeah, it wasn't a ton, and obviously he had a lot of explosive runs. I mean, but he had more than Devin did this year in rushing touchdowns in the regular season anyway. Crazy.
It's like that old was that on remember the Titans where they would use the one running back to get him down to the goal line and then give it to the flashy guy to score the touchdown?
Yeah, Sunshine was the more mobile.
He had the workhorse back. Yeah, he had 56 rushing attempts, 503 yards. That's a 9-yard average and 10 touchdowns. So he scored on roughly 20% of his touches.
Just insane. I knew it was a more than just a small handful of rushing touchdowns, but I was looking up the stats because of the questions you gave out yesterday, OC, for our prizes were who was the leader and whatever. So I was looking at the stats yesterday, and 10. I did not think it was 10. I thought it was maybe 7, which is what 5 to 7, which is what Devin has 7 rushing touchdowns this year. And I did not think it was double digits. That snuck up on me.
And by the way, if he had not started the Colorado game for an injured Devin Dampier, then that number probably would have been like 40 touches, 40 attempts.
Yeah.
With the same number of touchdowns effectively.
Yeah, he did. Did he get a rushing score in that game? He had 2. So he would have had 8 on like 40 attempts. Like that's like just an explosive.
He's just a beast, man.
An explosive beast this year.
And we're going to be talking about Bird Ficklin at length as soon as we get some clarity with the coaching situation and as soon as the transfer portal window. Well, we'll talk about it before the transfer portal window opens officially. I got these things planned out. I'm trying to take it as it comes because, man, this BYU coaching situation and the Utah coaching situation are dominoes that have to fall before we know what player personnel is likely to do. And even then, we won't know exactly what they're going to do.
By the way, the reason, one of the reasons why those need to fall first is because the players themselves are waiting on those things
Correct.
Too.
Yeah,
that's the way this works.
And actually, if you're a Utah fan, you hope that Bird Ficklin is waiting on clarity on exactly what's going to happen. I think that most players actually have a pretty good sense of what's going to happen. I think that they know a lot more about this than we do right now. But my hope is that Bird Ficklin is waiting on whether or not, hey, I don't know what the money's going to look like. I hope that because it would stand to reason that his agent's already got a bunch of those phone calls and that a decision's already been made. It's like the timing of these things is really fascinating to me because I keep hearing, I'm getting a text right now about this BYU Kalani situation, right? And you keep hearing, well, BYU's stepping up. They're going to make it right. It makes sense if this delays and you don't hear anything definitive, only if he's leaving. If you don't hear anything before the championship game, before BYU takes on Texas Tech about Kalani Sitake's contract, he's leaving. Because in that case, he would try to protect the mentality of the team, be distraction-free, et cetera, by not allowing Penn State to announce anything. And Kalani's the type of guy that he would just not sign anything until the game was over so that there was nothing to report. He's that level of like a chess player with all this stuff. That would explain a delay. If he's going to stay at BYU, the announcement should come today or tomorrow. If he's staying at BYU, there's no reason to delay. In fact, it only helps your cause in the conference championship game. It rallies the troops, so to speak. The fan base is just like, heck yeah, we got our guy. I almost said hell yeah, but they wouldn't say that because it's BYU. Heck yeah, we got our guy.
Outer darkness, yeah.
James, you can't go deep cuts. All right, we're taking too much time. We need to give the proper space for Jerem Jordan, who's going to join us next.
Absolutely. I do have a Wikipedia page update.
Okay. What is the
And it was not me that made this update, by the way. So here,
Okay.
it now does not say present Penn State head coach. Now, that's a couple of things could have happened here. Either it never said that, and it was just a Photoshop by that Twitter account that I saw put that on there, which, like, if you can edit things, you might as well just do it. Like, why do a Photoshop? So I'm not sure that's what happened, but it either never said Penn State head coach on his Wikipedia page, or it got edited really quickly back to what it was.
Wiki Watch.
Important stuff.
We'll ask Jerem Jordan if he made the Wikipedia correction on the Kalani Sitake Wikipedia page. Sean O'Connell Show with Jerem Jordan for Red and Blue next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. The BYU football team is bound for Arlington in a Big 12 championship rematch against Texas Tech. That is the second most interesting thing happening, maybe even the third most interesting thing happening with the BYU football program right now, which is insane to say. Time for some Red and Blue with Jerem Jordan, brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quinn. 0% down for 72 months on some vehicles. You want an F-150, a 2025 F-150, 0% for 5 years. Go check out the deals they've got going on, an extension to the Black Friday sales. Jerem Jordan, welcome to the show again. How are you, sir?
Is there something going on? What's happened? Is everyone refreshing Twitter or what?
Well, we've abandoned Twitter as an unreliable news source, and we're going with Wikipedia. We're just
for the people, by the people. Yeah.
We're just refreshing Kalani Sitake's Wikipedia page because earlier today it said Penn State head coach, and now it's back to BYU head coach. So we're just going to keep rolling with that.
Wild times, right? Here's the latest kind of vibes I'm getting is last night after a meeting with administration and higher-ups that it was a good meeting, that it went well. Nothing seems imminent or closed per se, although I'm getting good vibes that he's coming back. Like if I had to lean one way, it's that he's coming back and not leaving. But also told that Penn State came back with a lucrative higher offer. So my understanding from conversations about what Kalani wants is he wants an extension of time on his contract. He got that last year, but he wants more. He doesn't necessarily need to be he's not demanding to be like a top 3 paid head coach in the Big 12, although he deserves it. He would like to be, competitively paid, but he wants more for his assistants and he wants more in the NIL coffers. And it feels like yesterday that the donors around BYU really came to BYU's rescue in not only helping with a package that could entice him to return, meeting the criteria I just mentioned, but that there is support, that there is understanding, that there is love, that there is desire to keep him long term. He's gotten BYU to this point. I think BYU is way better off having him than not. I don't feel like there's a Kevin Young type where you could say, well, if he leaves, it could actually get better. Jay Hill seems like the obvious next guy, and I think Jay would do a good job. But what Kalani has done to get BYU to the 10-plus win space in a Power 4 league in year 2 and 3, we like to think that independence prepared BYU for this moment, and I think it did. But it was Kalani and the culture and the human element. People want to play for him. And tomorrow's signing day, and it's important that you figure this out soon. And from my conversations, it sounds like Kalani, regardless of what happens, he's going to coach that Big 12 title game and wants to regardless. And that's important because you could argue this is the biggest game BYU's played since the Holiday Bowl in 1984 for what's at stake. And so it's a big moment, hoping, feeling like he's coming back. But, everybody's got a price point there. And hopefully Penn State didn't do it. Because I think if he gets enough of what he wants at BYU, he will stay. The question is, what is enough?
It feels like, and I think, you and I probably have some of the same sources. You probably have way more than I do that are even better informed. So I defer to a lot of what you're saying. But I think no matter who you talk to, there's a sentiment out there that, hey, he'll take a hometown discount. You don't have to have the same dollar-for-dollar contract offer because he probably doesn't want to go to Penn State. He doesn't want to have less job security. He doesn't want to move his family if he doesn't have to. And so, if you extend that line of reasoning, it's like, okay, so let's say you get close in the ballpark on money, and then it comes down to really just support. And look, I work for a Utah radio station. We will make fun of BYU for a lot of things, but a lack of support is not one that we can even pretend to use. It feels like that should in a weird way be the easiest thing to promise Kalani Sitake. Hey, we know that we have the donors that'll give you the NIL money you need. We know that we can elevate your assistant salary pool. We can give you 8 more years if that's what you're asking for, because the support is something that BYU has in spades. What am I missing?
No, BYU has it. It's just really a conversation of, will BYU in football do what it's done in men's basketball, which is, hey, we're gonna pay a competitive price for our head coach, and we're gonna compete in NIL, and we're gonna get the best talent we can that fits BYU still. It's not like you get just anybody. It still has to fit. It's a unique place. But I feel like BYU's real close to kind of being in that space. Obviously, if there's a donor that wants to donate NIL to a certain sport, that's their prerogative. And we saw that even with Texas Tech softball, they literally bought the best pitcher in America and went to the College World Series for it. And it's not in men's hoops. AJ didn't come here for just money. He didn't even know what the money number was. That was his dad. He liked Kevin Young and obviously competitive NIL. You can't act like that's not part of the conversation.
Hold on. We're pretending that AJ didn't know what the number was on his own.
Ace's dad said AJ didn't know the number. He left that up to me, and he said there were others who offered more than BYU. He didn't just pick the highest one.
Interesting. Okay.
But to my point, it's yes, of course BYU is competitive in that space, and you have to be if you're going to get some of the best talent. And money is part of the conversation. As much as BYU has been ballers on a budget for a long time, they have been blessed recently, especially in this generation, with donors, with the tech money and whatnot. Shout out to those guys. I think we know who they are that support the program. That's an important piece of it. You cannot compete in collegiate athletics without that. And I think the church understands that if, and again, to reiterate, for those who don't know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints doesn't give $1 to BYU athletics. They totally could and could be justified in doing so. They choose not to. BYU has to create that revenue from ticket sales and TV revenue and, parking and whatever, and donors like that. It's the church could say like, hey, here's $50 million. Let's be the Notre Dame of this. They do not. They do not do that. BYU has to create that, and they have those around the program to support it, which is great. Continue to do it at a higher level, and just imagine where BYU could go because they've done it with good support. What if it was great around it financially, even more? Then what? Because what BYU is doing right now in this space is incredible. Imagine it with more resources. I could see this continuing for a while.
I mean, that's the fear if you're a Utah fan, honestly, is that as money becomes the primary driver of competitiveness in a lot of situations, that you can't keep up with your in-state rival because of what you just talked about, the generosity of the donors, the success of the donors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, there's access to funds, and I said this yesterday, and some people got mad at me. There's access to funds through those donors that no other teams in the Big 12 have. I guess with the exception, Texas Tech has proven that they're pretty flush. But like again, that's circling back to where the Kalani thing comes into play. If the question is money, I feel like BYU doesn't get to lean on money as an excuse. We can't afford that. Yes, you can. You can afford everything because look what you've done with your basketball program. And that's probably overly reductive, but if I'm on that football staff or if I'm Kalani's agent, that's probably the rebuttal I come back with. So then you get into like a trust discussion. And this happened years ago with Kyle Whittingham and when Chris Hill was the athletic director at the University of Utah, it was a lot more of a storyline. There were a lot of reports out there that those guys had a hard time sitting down at the table and seeing eye to eye on things. And they made it work, thank goodness. And both of them, I think, are legacies secure and intact when it comes to Utah athletics. There have been reports that, maybe Kalani and the new athletic director, Brian Santiago, don't see eye to eye the same way that he and Tom Holmoe did, or vice versa. Is there any validity to that? And if there is, how much does it matter in a discussion like this one? Because there are far more voices than just an athletic director and a head coach at this particular discussion table.
Right, and BYU is unique. Certainly there are other voices. At most universities, your AD is a very powerful figure. The president's probably the most powerful figure. That's not the case. It goes up to the Board of Trustees. That includes a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It includes approval for all things up to the very top to Dallin H. Oaks, who oversees the sanctioned university. So it's certainly a unique sort of vertical silo there, but it's an important moment, like you said, in the early legacy of Brian Santiago and Shane Reese, the president, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, BYU is certainly having those conversations, and Kalani's meeting with those individuals to figure out what's best for him, what's best for the university. I'm convinced personally, in my opinion, that retaining Kalani Sitake is the best move. Yes, Jay Hill is there. He'll be there. Perhaps later as well as an active member of the church who could be a great fit at this university. But I don't think that this is comparable to, hey, Mark Pope leaves, what now? Kevin Young sitting there, we could actually be better. I think Kalani Sitake is the best candidate in the world for BYU football right now because they can't just go get anyone. They have to get an active member of the church, and Kalani fits perfectly. He's perfectly aligned with the mission of the school and the university and the church and the program. Like, no one represents better. He takes the high road in every conversation. Like, he could not represent the ideals of BYU better. BYU needs to figure out how to retain him, and he's not asking for stuff that's ridiculous relative to himself in the Big 12. If Kalani asked to be the highest paid coach in the Big 12, that would not be ridiculous given market value, but I'm talking like historical precedent of how much that guy makes and what that sort of means and the optics of that. I think Kalani is asking for fair stuff, and I believe that BYU will give it to him. It's just whether he takes it.
Jerem Jordan is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, a little red and blue as we focus on BYU, and we have made it halfway through this conversation without talking about what should be the number one story in BYU athletics right now.
Signing day tomorrow?
No, the fact that they're 11-1 heading to a Big 12 championship game against a formidable Texas Tech team. And look, we saw how the first meeting went. I see the way that BYU is playing right now. You know, Bear Bachmeier is this much more experienced, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, is that going to be the same outcome? And now we have to bring this type of conversation in. The distractions, hey, if he's going, where am I going type thing that players might be having to worry about. And I think players do a better job than people give them credit for in compartmentalizing. I think we saw that from Ole Miss this past weekend in their Egg Bowl. But it's not nothing for BYU players to be wondering if their head coach is going or staying as they get ready for the most important game of their careers and arguably the most important or maybe second most important game in the history of BYU football. How does this matchup play out with all of that context?
This is a massive distraction. It absolutely is. I know Kalani said, hey, we don't want it to be. It is. The only way it turns positives for BYU is if Kalani announces in the next day or two or three that he's coming back. Now it's a galvanizing moment, right? Because if he leaves, my understanding from conversation is that he will coach this game regardless of what happens here. Not a Lane Kiffin situation where, hey, he's not coaching at Ole Miss. Like, he would coach the Big 12 title game. I can't speak to if BYU won that, went to the playoff. I don't know that answer. Kalani Sitake is scheduled to join BYU Sports Nation tomorrow to talk about signing day. So we'll get an opportunity to ask him some questions about the situation. I'm hoping that he figures it out before 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. So we can go into this, but honestly, it's wild. I have a hard time feeling like this wouldn't distract BYU against a superior opponent to where BYU could pull this off if they don't have an answer. Certainly, as you mentioned, BYU is playing better. They made several simple mistakes at the beginning of that game that I think swung that game a certain way. Yes, Texas Tech won by 22, which, by the way, was the closest margin of any Texas Tech win in the Big 12. They beat everybody else by more, which is crazy. I'm not saying that as a moral victory point, just as they've dominated fools. Texas Tech is really good. To me, they should be in the top 4 tonight. I have them number 2 in the country in my top 10. They're the number 1 defense in America by PFF. The offense is number 12. They have all the skill positions. Great. Baron Morton hasn't lost a game this year. Remember, it was Will Hammond who started against ASU in their one loss. They are legit. BYU is going to have probably an announcement that Kalani is returning, and then they're going to have to play mistake-free football. They don't have to play perfect. They just have to play better than Texas Tech. They need some early momentum. They probably need to play with the lead. They need to get after Baron Morton. They need to shut down that offense. Defensively, they need to be able to run the ball, even though this is the best defense in America against the run and overall. I mean, it's crazy. They have the most fumble recoveries. They tied second in turnovers gained, number 1 in EPA. Like, there's a million things that Texas Tech does great. If BYU played them 100 times, I don't know how many they beat them, but luckily they just play them once on Saturday, and they're 60 minutes away. And BYU is probably, if Texas Tech's an A, BYU is an A-. So I think it's going to be a fun matchup, and I can't wait to see if BYU can pull it off.
There's the larger conversation. We'll get a little bit more insight on what the committee thinks of what BYU's done in rankings that are released tonight. There was no upset we were all hoping for ahead of BYU or Utah in the final weekend of the season. So is it win and get in? Is it win this championship or bust in your mind when it comes to BYU's inclusion in a college football playoff?
Probably, and that's really disappointing. I think BYU should be inside the top 10. I think Notre Dame should be behind BYU. That's the only spot that I see that in, like, if I was asked, I have BYU 10, Notre Dame 9. I have A&M down at 9, by the way. Just looking at all the resume, like the strength of record is strong, strength of schedule is better than Ole Miss, Indiana, even Texas Tech, Ohio State. I'm not saying BYU is better than Texas Tech. They lost a head-to-head. You'd tip the cap. BYU has 6 wins against 6+ win teams. They have 2 ranked wins. That's more than Oregon and Indiana, by the way. There's some metrics that make sense. BYU is the lowest ranked one-loss team in forever. At the end of the regular season like this, there's been a lot of research done. It's frustrating that BYU is not inside the top 10. I could see a scenario for an at-large if Alabama got absolutely destroyed by Georgia. Now they have a 3rd loss. Now, BYU has, 2 if they lose, and they're trying to get the at-large. Alabama has some good stuff. Obviously, 3 ranked wins, beating Georgia the first time, beating Vandy. Strength of record's good. The schedule's good. I just, if there was some level of nuclear chaos in that kind of game, I could see that. But it's probably you have to win and in, which is really disappointing. I'm not sure how much more BYU could have done in this year. You play who you play, and they have 2 wins against top 25 teams and have done well on the road and all this stuff. Like, people look at game control and eye test, sure. Whatever you care about. I just see that BYU has 11 wins. They have a strength of record of 6. Their strength of schedule is solid at 35. They have 2 ranked wins. That should be a playoff team.
Yeah, it actually sucks because the conference, the Big 12 conference this year, we were like, man, there's going to be so much parity, and parity kills your chances for multiple teams in the college football playoff, and that's not how it played out. You had 2 elite teams emerge, and Utah is a close second behind Texas Tech and BYU on that first tier. So, all of those teams kind of separated themselves from the pack, and yet it looks like it's probably going to be a one-bid league still, which is discouraging from the conference viewpoint. And I think Yormark and even Joey McGuire did the right thing in campaigning, but I don't know if the committee's paying any attention to that. Should Ole Miss be punished because of they don't have their head coach?
It's a good question. It is technically part of the criteria. They did it with Jordan Travis with the Florida State, notably a couple years ago, as they were 5th and not inside that top 4. It wouldn't be a problem right now, but I don't know. Ole Miss's strength of record 7, strength of schedule is 40. BYU's better in both of those, by the way. BYU's more wins against 6+ teams. They have the same number of ranked wins. Like, BYU's resume actually looks better than Ole Miss. I get the credibility of like, oh, they're playing the SEC, but like, what do the numbers and resume actually say? That BYU is actually on par with Ole Miss. That could be an opening, as you're bringing it up, to potentially tonight be up just a touch. Is Ole Miss down enough? Is Ole Miss going to go down 4 spots? Like, I don't, a couple of spots. I don't know. BYU's clinging by a thread, and they obviously have to play at least a close game to even be considered. But it's also weird because what if BYU's only losses are to a team that is in the top 4 on Selection Sunday? Then what? It's like they beat everybody else. Come on. Like, what if Michigan did that? They beat everybody else but Ohio State twice. Let's say they played them in the conference championship. They'd be in for sure. BYU's still building its brand as much as we'd like to think that they should be at this level. And I do, in my super biased opinion. It's super frustrating that BYU, with 11 wins and the solid metrics that they have, good, very good in some spaces, isn't obviously in. There's been a lot of rhetoric around that nationally, and it's merited. They're not saying it because it's made up. They're saying it because it's merited.
Circling back to the big-time topic, if we don't get an announcement tonight, does that mean Kalani's gone? Because it makes sense to delay if he's leaving. It doesn't make sense to delay if he's staying. Like you said, it's a rallying cry. It's a reason for recruits to stay firm on their commitments, et cetera, et cetera. If we don't get, another in the next 12 hours or so, if we don't get something from Kalani Sitake's camp or from BYU that, hey, we got an extension done, will that make you lean towards he's leaving?
Not necessarily. They could still be figuring out details and whatnot, but I would prefer that it be done today. I know the start of signing day is tomorrow, and this is, as of now, on 24/7 Sports. This is number 20 class in the country overall and composite. This is the greatest, crop of BYU commits ever, and obviously there's some massive names that anybody in the country would want to grab in three of these guys specifically. So hopefully they can figure it out soon, because it could be, over the next couple of days, hey, if something's announced Wednesday night or Thursday, they could still sign Thursday, Friday. They have several days there, but, they could always wait till February, but BYU wants to get a bunch of these guys in here January and keep this going. So I think timing's important. I know it got hot and heavy yesterday on social media with stuff. I think tonight and tomorrow are very important in terms of timing for BYU signing class. And frankly, Penn State's probably feeling the same way. They have one of the lowest rated signing classes because they're getting poached by James Franklin and Virginia Tech and everybody else. What does that class look like even if Kalani goes to Penn State? I'm hoping not to find out.
For the record, I'm hoping he stays. Even though that makes Utah's life more difficult, I have a great affection for Kalani and for a lot of the guys on that staff. And when BYU football and Utah football are both good, it elevates everything here in the States. So it's unpopular to say on my own show on a Utah radio station, but I'm hoping they find a way to keep him.
Yeah, and this does affect Utah either way. Like, I think if Kalani bounced and Jay Hill became the OC, like, I could see a Fesi Satake being the OC at BYU in the next group. I could see Jason Beck being perhaps courted to come back home to BYU. So it does affect Utah, whatever happens there. You heard Marcotte Tuaya. He can rap all he wants down here. Like, yeah, whatever they want, man.
You don't put that evil on the Utes. Jason
we
Beck.
Let you have him, and you let us have James Jody. It's all even, dude.
Jason Beck hates cougar tails. He told me so.
You're right, dude.
Nobody hates cougar tails. They're delicious.
There's no. By the way, there's no way two other rivals nationally cross over the coaches and or the transfers among players, right? Like, this has to be the most intertwined rivalry of, well, yeah, I played here but coached there and vice versa. Like, I don't see it
100%.
anywhere else. I'm not hearing, like, Auburn. Oh, yeah, that Auburn guy, those four guys are at Alabama. It's so unique. We are connected.
Yes, it's absolutely the most incestuous coaching situation in the country.
Well, let's phrase it differently, but yeah.
No, it's an ugly word, but it's perfect for this because it's just like, oh,
unfortunately, yes.
I hate it, but it's true. So, Jeremy, you're the man. Thanks for your time and your insight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Keep Kalani.
Jerem Jordan in our red and blue, brought to you by Murdoch Ford Santa Quin. Incredible Black Friday sales continue. 0% down on the Explorer and the Escape and the 2025 F-150s for 60 months. You want a Mach-E or a Lightning? How about 0% for 72 months, $0 down payments, and no payments for 90 days? If you've been looking at a Ford, now is the time to grab one. Go to Murdoch Ford Santa Quin.
By the way, drove past Murdoch Ford Santa Quin on my way down south for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It is, so you got the Red Barn.
Yeah.
Down the road, you got the gas station. It used to just be a couple gas stations there. Now there is a giant Ford dealership.
Wow.
Just in the middle of that used to be empty field.
Yeah, it used to just be like a valley.
It's now like, I drove past it and I went, oh my gosh, what is that? And I went, oh, that's Murdoch Ford Santa Quin.
That's
one of our
pretty
great
cool.
sponsors. We love them.
Should have stopped by and been like, hey, give me one of them F-150s. And you should have gone to the Red Barn for some treats.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, missed out.
Red Barn, by the way, you should sponsor the show too. We just accidentally gave him 2 shouts out. Sean O'Connell Show continues with the Daily Dump. We have some great sound for you on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, Monday Night Football last night in the NFL was ultimately not an overly compelling game. 33-15 victory. Patriots had a very, very strong first half. They continue to be maybe a Super Bowl favorite. 11-2 now. The Giants are the opposite, right? They're a floundering franchise with, though, some young bright spots, sitting at 2-11. And this game, if you're just a casual football fan, you probably aren't going to watch it. If you have Utah football connections, you did want to watch this game because there's guys on both rosters that either played here or, I don't know, maybe their dad coaches here. And in fact, one of the most interesting plays of the game, and the most talked about play of the game certainly, was Jackson Dart, the former Roy High School, Corner Canyon High School kid, USC Trojan, Ole Miss Rebel. He takes off running, and right as he's about to step out of bounds, Christian Ellis, the son of course, Luther Ellis, brother of several Utah Ellises, just destroys him. Legal hit, knocks him out of bounds. You've seen the highlight. If you haven't seen the highlight, go find it. And immediately the offensive line for the Giants and everyone on the sideline takes exception, and they're starting to try to fight and, just a little kerfuffle. No big deal. Well, it leads to a greater discussion on, hey, first of all, was the hit legal? Yes. Second of all, if you're a quarterback, should you be taking those hits? And everyone weighed in, including the broadcast team and, of course, the two players in question. Let's start with the broadcast team here.
Dart's going to go and gets popped on the sideline, and we're going to get a fight. Christian Ellis delivered the hit, and these two teams are going at each other. Take a closer look at it. Once he gets outside the pocket here, this is in real speed. Oh. And to your point, Troy, he's got to take the sideline. He's got to get out of bounds before that hit comes. He absolutely has to.
So, again, you watch the play, and Jackson Dart can step out of bounds after getting the yardage. He could, and not take that hit. Christian Ellis was going full speed, laid a huge hit. It knocked Dart actually all the way over the sideline. You know, the white chalk? That's like a full yard of white. He didn't touch ground. He didn't touch it. He didn't touch it. He just went airborne over that. Legal hit, like I said, but of course, Ellis is going to be asked about a postgame, and Jackson Dart was asked about it in several different ways, especially because he's had concussion problems already. People are worried about his health, but he does not seem willing to change his playing style.
Look, I understand the question, but this is football. I'm going to get hit if I'm in the pocket or outside the pocket. I feel like I've played this way my whole entire life. This shouldn't be any shocker to anybody if you've followed along with my career. And we're not playing soccer out here. You're gonna get hit, things happen. It's part of the game.
I love the mentality, truly. That's the kind of quarterback you want playing on your team. If I'm his teammate, I love it. If I'm his family member, if I'm his high school friend, if I'm somebody I don't know if he's romantically involved or whatever, if you're his life partner, you're like, hey, I get it. You got away with that in high school, and you got away with that in college. You're already, as a rookie, though, seeing the consequences of that playing style in the NFL. And it's such a delicate line to walk, in my opinion, where you don't want to dull his shine. You don't want to take away his edge. Jackson Dart, say what you want about him. The kid has it. He's that swagger-fueled quarterback that plays fearless. He's fearless with his arm. He's going to put a couple balls into interception, into harm's way, because he's a gunslinger. And he's a gunslinger when he's got the ball in his hands and he's running and he's scrambling too. At some point, the tax man comes when you're a quarterback and that's your playing style. And I should say when you're a quarterback who's built like Jackson Dart, right? I mean, Cam Newton took too much punishment, and Cam Newton is built like a defensive end. I don't know. I don't like to say I don't know, but I truly have a hard time wondering where the coaching line is, because you don't want to say, hey, just get down, just get down, just get down. We saw this at Utah football with Tyler Huntley when they were like, stay in the pocket and throw the ball. He wasn't that great at it when they were just like, you're not allowed to run. Stay in the pocket and throw the ball. And he did, and it was kind of like, oh, did we do the right thing letting him be the starter early in his career? And then Ludwig shows up, and he's like, hey, let's create a more balanced attack here. Be smart with the way you run, but absolutely still do run. I think that's what you have to do with Jackson Dart. Say, yes, pull the ball down, go. Just take that step out of bounds that you almost made, actually make it. So you don't, I mean, it's a split-second decision, so you don't get hit by Christian Ellis, or if you do get hit by Christian Ellis, it's at least a penalty, and it's going to discourage. And by the way, let's play the Christian Ellis sound, because he also has the right approach here.
Hey, Christian, what kind of message can a hit like that send to a quarterback or an opposing offense?
Make sure to slide.
Yeah. Make sure to slide. Which, by the way,
I'm coming is what he just said. Yeah.
Which, by the way, the rule book and the competition committee goes over these things and what's the point of emphasis going to be and how are the referees going to be instructed. They were very, very, very clear that quarterbacks were starting to exploit the rules where they would tiptoe on that sideline, right? Can't touch me, can't touch me, can't touch me. They get 2-3 extra yards out of it. Or where quarterbacks would fake the slide and a defensive player would pull up, and now the quarterback uses that as a juke and continues the run. The NFL does a great job of reassessing its own rule book every single year, and one of the points of emphasis that they put in was like, you better slide for real, because when you make the motion to pretend you're sliding, that's sliding. And also when you're on the sideline, if you're just going out of bounds, but you're still in bounds, we're going to let them hit you. If you're out of bounds, they can't touch you. But we're not doing the thing that we did 4 years ago where your momentum is about to carry you out of bounds, and that's going to be a late hit and unnecessary roughness on a defender just because he shoves you out of bounds to make sure you go. They saw that quarterbacks, and Pat Mahomes was the worst at it, were exploiting that. And so they're just like, defense, sideline is once again fair game for you. And Christian Ellis, good on him for knowing it and for going full speed until that guy's on the white. He is a target, and he laid some wood. And then, by the way, James, he knew the retaliation was coming. He hops up. He sees bodies coming at him. He keeps his feet moving, all right? He's head on a swivel. He's not going to get blindsided by some offensive lineman. He handled it perfectly in the actual moment, in the postgame, and all of it. Christian Ellis then at the podium postgame, even though he's an Idaho Vandal, did you see the shirt he was wearing?
I missed it.
Same logo that's on your hat.
Aha!
He had very clearly team-issued Utah football. Well, it's just, I guess it's not Utah football. It could be Utah basketball. But like a drum and feather sweatshirt. Good on you, Christian Ellis.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, even though a lot of Luther's sons played at Idaho, because Luther was a coach at Idaho for a while before joining with staff, clearly there's a lot of love for the University of Utah in that family. And honestly, FCS, doing that is not like a betrayal towards your FCS school that you went to, right? It'd be something else if they were both FBS schools and you're doing that, but the different levels, you're allowed to have allegiances at the other level there. But that's awesome. Going back to what you were talking about with the with the quarterbacks starting to exploit and Mahomes being the worst of it. They were like the old way of like, hey, that's a penalty if it looks like they're about to go out of bounds or momentum's carrying to them. That became so obsolete in the last few years, like you were saying, because quarterbacks like Mahomes and others practiced the agility and the flexibility and everything, the balance to fake that and still stay in bounds and still go up the field a little bit more. Elway wasn't doing that.
Yeah, that's
Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, they couldn't do that. But today, Mahomes and other quarterbacks have said, we can do that. Kenny Pickett famously at Pitt did the fake slide in the ACC championship game. You remember this? And then the next season, NCAA says, yeah, that's not allowed. They were even faster than the NFL is to what you were saying about how quickly NFL changed their rules. So, like, that's why, I mean, if anyone had a problem with the way Christian Ellis attacked that, Giants fans or whatever, like, just watch what Mahomes did last year in particular, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's fine.
You have to be aware of all the gamesmanship that happens, and thankfully the NFL is. And again, credit to Jackson Dart for having a competitor's mentality. I don't know for quarterbacks in particular, like if you're a running back, you can't change your running style. You just have to do it.
Well, and you have to be willing to take contact if you're a running back.
I guess if you're a running back, you can, even in that situation, you can step out of bounds a little bit faster. Maybe. But for quarterbacks, man, it's this really, really delicate balance. It's a fine, fine line. It's an invisibly fine line where you have to prove to your teammates that you're willing to put your body on the line the same way that they do. But also, if you've been in concussion protocol twice in one season,
you're not even through your rookie year yet.
You have to think about it, right? I mean, and you have to go. You were making this point during the break. You don't have to listen. You could get as mad at reporters as you want. And you could tell he was a little frustrated by the line of questioning, and he handled it graciously. But he's like, I understand the question. You could tell it bothers him a little bit because you don't want to be questioned by some fat media guy who's never been there before. But if Steve Young calls you, or if Troy Aikman calls you, or if any of the myriad quarterbacks who saw their careers ended prematurely, or even if they didn't end their careers prematurely, who just
they're Hall of Famers.
They just walked in your shoes and they know, like, hey, man, at some point that whole thing's coming home to roost. Like, you can't take unnecessary hits at this level. NFL players, and I've said it a dozen times in every way I can possibly, they are not built like the rest of us. If James runs up to you on the street and tackles you, it's going to hurt, okay? But you're going to survive that.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you won't. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Built different, OC. No.
If anybody with the last name Ellis, 2 L's, 2 S's, runs up to you and hits you as a regular human being.
Even Luther at his age right now.
Probably especially Luther. He's probably the scariest of all of them still.
He's gigantic still.
All of his sons, by the way, Caden, Noah, Christian.
Caden's carved himself a heck of an NFL career.
I mean, these guys are all monsters.
Yeah.
And so you have to, at some point, be realistic. And like, all right, Jonah Ellis is running full speed at me. I think I could get out of bounds here, or I could slide here, or I could fight for this extra yard.
Or I could, and I may get hit anyway. Like you said, I was going to bring that up. He's running committed to knock the snot out of Jackson Dart. So there's a good chance that if Dart puts a foot out of bounds a half second earlier, he still gets hit just as hard, but it's a 15-yard penalty. So that's another reason why just get out of bounds. I think you have to somehow, OC, have the mentality that you want all the smoke like Jackson Dart does. We had this same kind of discussions with Cam Rising too at University of Utah. You want all the smoke, you want to challenge guys, but you also have to not do it, right? Like somehow you have to show that you have that mentality to the rest of your teammates and your coaching staff, but also most of the time, and like by most of the time I mean like 8-9 times out of 10, don't challenge.
Yeah.
But which is like sounds impossible to do, by the way.
Like if you're a quarterback and you want everyone to know that you're tough, pick a fight with like a corner.
Or the punter.
Like a corner, a guy that comes on a corner blitz and hits you and talks trash, stand up off that tackle and fight him.
By the way, I'm picturing Baker Mayfield a few times doing that very same thing,
Yeah.
like chirping at smaller guys.
And look, Brett Favre used to do it with like Michael Strahan.
Yeah, not very wise.
Like he would chirp the big guys, knowing his offensive line was going to protect him. But it's weird because I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. You have to applaud the competitiveness and the grit, but you also have to remind these young people that you're not invincible.
Yeah.
And it's a wisdom that unfortunately only comes with age and only comes with experience and only comes probably with getting your bell rung a few too many times. And that's happened twice already this season as a rookie. I don't want it to continue to be a problem for Jackson Dart. That's the Daily Dump brought to you by Valley Plumbing. Any of your plumbing or drain cleaning needs, look for the truck with the duck. I put a poll question out about we're assuming that the college football coaching carousel will touch every staff one way or another. Well, if it's going to touch Utah's staff and you wave a magic wand, you can keep one of the assistant coaches. You can block them. They can't leave. Who's the most important? I put a poll question out. Your results next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Who is the most important assistant coach at the University of Utah? The coaching carousel's spinning. Assume that the coaching carousel wants all of your coaches, all right? And tell me who's the most important one to retain. The poll is up at Real OC Sports on Twitter. You can text me at 877-353-0700. Morgan Scally, Jason Beck, Jim Harding, other, you could tell me who. Right now, Morgan Scally running away with it, nearly 60% of the votes. He is, for now, until we are told otherwise, he's an assistant coach on this staff. He is the head coach in waiting. There are a vocal small number of people that say, you can't just hand the program over to him. Yes, you can, and you should, and you will. He's been a great defensive coordinator.
I love the "and you will" at the end. It's like you will have nothing and like it.
Well, look, Utah football cannot at this moment be like, just kidding. The head coach in waiting thing was not guaranteed. We're hiring whoever.
Especially after this was they gave the title back to him.
Yes.
Like you're going to take it back again unless there's good reason to do that. Like there was at the first time he got it taken away. Like you not doing that again.
You're not. So, right now, Morgan Scally 57.7%, Jason Beck 34.1%, Jim Harding 8.1%, and very few people are saying anything else. Now, here's the thing. I thought Jim Harding would be getting, because of how good the offensive line was and how good, Jim Harding has had an NFL offensive lineman every single year. He's had, Garrett Bowles was a very highly rated first-round pick. He's one of the highest compensated offensive linemen in the NFL. It's worked out very nicely. Jim Harding got that commitment, developed that talent. He was only here for a season. I get it, right? Now you've got Fano and Lomu, who we expect to be first-round draft picks. At least one of those guys is going to be an early first-round draft pick. So, I thought Jim Harding would maybe garner more than 8% of this vote. But I say that even as I acknowledge, Jason Beck is going to be one of the hottest coaches in the country this year. If Utah had won one more game, if they had beat BYU, Jason Beck, if they're headed to Arlington for a conference championship game, if they had potentially become a playoff team, Jason Beck is going to be given a massive, massive, massive amount of credit nationally for saving Utah football. I'm throwing up the air quotes on YouTube because last year they were so abysmally bad. And, when you talk about national conversations, the context of things like injuries get removed some, especially when there's a coaching change. And Jason Beck would be one of the hottest offensive names in the country. He still should be, but if Utah was one game better on the win-loss record and they were in tonight's college football playoff rankings firmly, we'd be having different discussions about him.
Do you think, and small tangent here, do you think, because we talked about in the red and blue with Jerem Jordan, Jerem brought up BYU's brand isn't where BYU fans, a lot of them probably think it is, or it certainly should be, right?
Right.
And that's probably why they're right on the outside of the CFP and not where Notre Dame is, for example. Do you think if Utah wins the Holy War game, do you think and basically same resume as BYU, other than that, do you think they're in the same spot as BYU, or do you think they're solidly in tonight?
No, I think they're in the same spot as BYU potentially. Maybe a little bit better off because if everything else has happened, right, if it's 24-21 Utah instead of 24-21 BYU.
Still the loss to Texas Tech, everything else the same.
All the other things are the same. Like Utah, from a metric standpoint, is more impressive for the committee. But still, the committee would be like, well, okay, they're an 11-1 team, but what happened these last 2 weeks to the defense, Those conversations are still happening. So I still think that Utah would have to beat Texas Tech. I think that's a Big 12 problem. And BYU is going to want to make it about BYU, and I understand why, but it's a Big 12 problem where Miami can not even be in their conference championship game, and they're going to desperately try to find a way to get the Hurricanes in. the SEC can have. I mean, people are talking about a 3-loss Alabama team getting in.
Texas, by the way, too. Like, so much momentum for, hey, Texas deserves to be in, and the excuses of, well, they're only not in because they scheduled Ohio State. It's like, yeah, you still lost.
Well, they lost, and they're not being punished for losing to Ohio State. They're being punished for losing to Florida.
Yeah.
If you lose only to Ohio State, you're fine.
Yeah, people are, and to Texas A&M, who was undefeated in rivalry game and all that. They beat them, but it was Georgia they lost to.
If you lose to Ohio State and Georgia,
you're fine.
2 teams that are firmly in the playoff.
You're probably 10th.
Everyone's like, yeah, Texas, you belong in, and I would not argue against it.
Yeah,
but if you're going to punish BYU for losing to Texas Tech, and you're going to punish Utah for not impressively beating Kansas State and Kansas, you have to punish Texas for losing to a 3-win Florida team. You have to. Anyway, we'll have that debate tomorrow. Jeff Schwartz joins us next. We'll talk all things college football, NFL, the coaching carousel. He's a football insider. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome to hour number 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Jeff Schwartz, former Oregon Duck, longtime NFL veteran, one-time my co-host on Pac-12 Today. His Oregon Ducks are firmly in the college football playoff conversation. Jeff Schwartz, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, the Oregon's in the conversation. I was thinking about our show last night because I'm like up for another job I'm not going to get. I was talking to my buddy about it. And I was just thinking to myself, like, it's just gone downhill in radio for like I got fired from my Pac-12 job. I mean, we didn't even get fired. They just told us our show was over.
It was the most. It was like we were in the room and they just turned off the lights and walked away, and we're like, "Yep."
That is still the thing that pisses me off more than anything else. I'll never get over it. I know you won't either. Is like, we didn't get fired. Like we just, like, no one was like, you guys suck. You can't work here anymore.
Yeah.
It just was like, your conference that you've had for 100 years is gone.
Yeah.
We have no service for you anymore. There's no need
there's no need for your services.
Like there wasn't even like an exit interview. There wasn't anything like, no, like I didn't really like this about your show or that about your show. Like, no, just like, no, we just don't. That's it. That's just no more. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I don't. It's such an odd experience. Thanks a lot, Carol Folt.
And they told us to like 4 days beforehand.
Yes.
Like it wasn't like a month. It was like no. Like basketball starts in 4 days. We're done before basketball.
Oh, thanks. Cool.
Or was it March? Yeah, no, it was before basketball. We ended right after football, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
after.
correct.
No, it was after the national championship game. They were like, yeah, you have 1 week left.
Yeah, they were like, we thought we were like talking privately, like, they'll probably go through March Madness at least.
Yeah, March Madness. Yeah,
and they're just like, we don't care about basketball. We're done. So
we're done after the I think they told us a week before the national championship game that was going to be our second. We had 1 week after the game. Basically.
Yay!
Yeah. So anyway. I was regaling that last night with a buddy who were both up for the same job, and so I was just telling about it last night. But you're right, Oregon's in the playoff. I heard you talking before the break. I want to spend 19 minutes talking about Kalani Sitake because this story to me is so fascinating for many reasons. One is Kalani Sitake does not fit Penn State at all. I don't get that fit. It makes no sense to me. I think he's at the perfect job for him. I've heard his name thrown out for Penn State like privately for a month now. I think he's their 7th option. They just got denied everyone, which, by the way, I don't get why Penn State can't find a coach. I mean, signing day is tomorrow. They don't have a coach. They were the first one really to get a start on this whole thing, and either everyone said no or they've been non-committal. But from the beginning, Sean, Sitake makes no sense here. Do we agree on this from the start?
Well, I think he's a good football coach, so I think he makes sense for anyone who wants a good football coach. To me, it doesn't make sense for him to leave Provo, and it doesn't make sense that Penn State would be the job where he would go to. He has connections in, like, Southern California. He's got connections in Texas. He's got connections in a lot of different places. And Pennsylvania, especially middle of nowhere Pennsylvania, is not one of them. So from that angle, sure.
But I also think that it's not always about coaching, right? It's about, to your point, like the region you're in, the relationships you make in that region. Have you recruited at all in that place? And just, obviously the answer to all that is no for him in this situation. It's just an odd. It's not about whether he can coach or not. We all know he can coach. I think just about the fit of him at Penn State doesn't make sense to me. And then you add in the factor that he's a BYU alum. I was looking this up. So you have to be a member of the church to be the head coach at BYU. Is that true?
Yes. So
their options are even limited to hire a replacement for Sitake.
Correct.
Which plays a big role in this as well.
It's one of the, and Jay Hill, who's his defensive coordinator, who's, he was an assistant at Utah. He played at Utah. He then went to Weber State where he was the head coach, and he brought them to, multiple playoff appearances at Weber State, which is something they have never done. And, he left that job to be the coordinator at BYU to work with his friend Kalani Sitake. They were on the Utah staff together and know each other incredibly well, and he's done a phenomenal job there. A lot of people credit Jay Hill for the big turnaround BYU has made. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, they were a 5-win team, and obviously it's been uphill since. And he is the most obvious replacement.
Well, that's good they have a replacement there. The other thing that is, to me, has made this story nationally very interesting, because I know this because I've worked with you and we've talked about BYU in the past, is that I don't think people realize how much money BYU has.
They have so much money.
And the idea that BYU can financially and possibly exceed what Penn State was willing to offer in support, not just salary. Because, look, a lot of these deals now are not just about what you're making. It's about what your assistants are making, right? It's about what your NIL budget is. It's about what your facilities budget is. It's about what your private jet usage is to go recruit, right? Like, it's all those things. And so I think nationally people just did not realize how much money BYU has and the influence that the church and the members that are involved in hiring and firing coaches there, like how much that plays a role in this, in whether or not Stockey was. I think they, obviously, if you go to Penn State, if BYU didn't have that support, he'd already be their coach. But there's a lot of support to keep him, obviously, and I find that nationally people learning about this, to me, it's been very interesting.
Well, it's a fascinating sort of picture because the donor base is incredibly wealthy. They're very passionate about BYU sports. And BYU seemed to, as an institution, as an athletic department, seemed to have zero problem bringing a guy in from the NBA to take over basketball. And I know that the math is a little different with basketball, but they brought in Kevin Young, and immediately, before he had coached a college game, they gave him this beautiful compensation package, and then they made him a top 10 paid coach, according to reports. And, of course, they're private universities, so they don't have to release the salaries, but he's got an agent, and his agent wants everyone to know how good of a job he's doing. So, like he's allegedly a top 15 basketball salary. I cannot get to a point where I understand why you wouldn't do that with football when Kalani Sitake has you headed to your first Power 4 championship game ever.
Yeah. And also too, it's more about like the future too, right? Like if you pay him now and you pay him, but his name won't come up next year, right?
Right.
And today is signing. Tomorrow's signing day. Like you want the recruits, and you have a big quarterback recruit, right? He's going on a mission though, but he's, I think Oregon was on him, and maybe Georgia was on him. So having him locked in because your coach signs a 6-year deal is important. So it's important for all these parties that a deal gets done and is sufficient and makes coach happy and want to stay. And I get it. The longer this goes, I think this more plays in the favor of him staying at BYU. I feel like if he would have wanted that job, he'd already have it by now.
Okay, that you and I disagree there.
Okay.
Because the only reason to delay any kind of announcement is because he wants to coach the conference championship game, and he wants his players to not be distracted by his leaving. And like if you were going to stay the course, and that was the number one option in your mind, sign it right now. If BYU is going to step up the way they should, sign it right now and put all the conversation to rest. Get back to practice today and sign the guys that have already committed to you tomorrow. I think that the longer this goes, the more likely it is he's gone.
Interesting.
Because I don't think I really what I know about Kalani is that he will desperately do everything he can to protect his current players, even knowing the reality of the situation. And I truly believe he won't sign a Penn State deal until after the conference championship game at the very least. He'll have a verbal agreement, but he won't give anybody anything definitive to report on if he's going to Penn State until they have played Texas Tech. At BYU, there's no reason for a delay. If BYU steps up to the plate, says your assistants get what you asked for, you get what you asked for, sign it in 5 minutes, and we're off. The story's over.
So this is basically like the Lane thing, where Lane, at the very beginning, when they're like, well, in 2 weeks we'll have an answer. It was like very clearly if he wanted to stay at Ole Miss, he would have already signed a new contract and stayed.
Yeah.
The Lane thing, by the way, is just, it is
absurd.
What's obviously even worse is the media. Like, I'm not one to be like the media. People go like uppity about the media. Dude, this has been gross from ESPN. Like really, really gross. To have Nick Saban, who publicly tells everyone that Lane Kiffin should be able to take the Ole Miss, the LSU job, and coach his playoff team, right? While privately advising him to take the LSU job is totally wrong. And to not disclose that information is ludicrous to me. To have the way they're talking about, about this and sort of putting the blame on Ole Miss. No, this is Lane cheating on a spouse and then asking to stay for Christmas and thinking that it's the spouse's fault that he's not around for the kids' Christmas. No, it's your fault. You left. And this is the consequence of you leaving. And here's the thing. People will point to North Texas and Tulane and their coaches, JMU coaches, staying on for a postseason berth. Well, yeah, it's a group of 5 school, and they're not going to the rival. He's going to a school that he is directly recruiting or would be directly recruiting against his current school. And there's players on the current roster, I would imagine, or he's trying to get to come to LSU. He can't do both. And to basically have the media, and I know he didn't do that, but his agent did, have the media out there making these excuses for him and propping him up like this has been really gross, man. Like it's very blatant what they're trying to do.
Well, I also hate, and I said this on the show yesterday, and I know that, money is what rules everything, but I just don't really fully understand, but I certainly don't like the fact that at some point Lane Kiffin had to stand up in front of a room full of guys that have played some really good football this year, that has him in the college football playoff pursuing a national championship, and he had to stand up in front of that room and say, that's not good enough for me. Like, being in the hunt for a national championship after the regular season is over is not good enough for me. What?
Yeah. So this is interesting because we covered Kalen DeBoer leaving Washington. Were we still doing the show then?
Yeah.
Did we cover that? I forget. But Kalen DeBoer left Washington, right, after a playoff run to go to Alabama. And I don't think we gave him this much grief, but the difference here is that he did it quietly, right? Like part of this is how loud Lane has been for 2 weeks about this, whether it's subtweeting and whether it's putting out subliminal messaging and putting out, I think there were some Bible quotes that sort of led to speculation that things were going to happen. And that to me, Sean, is what makes it much different than anything else, because he didn't do it quietly. If he had done it quietly and then sort of asked Ole Miss, hey man, can I keep, coach this team the rest of the way? Maybe they would have let him do it. But it was so loud and so in their face and such a circus that they had to let him go and not finish the job here. And I think that makes it a lot worse. I think he maybe could have sold them on, hey man, I'll keep this quiet. I'll sort of have a handshake deal with LSU, but I'll come and finish the job here. But it was as loud as possible, Sean. And after that, there's just no way they're going to let him stay and do both jobs.
Signing day is tomorrow, like you mentioned. Utah football has a less complicated situation than Ole Miss, certainly, and a less complicated situation potentially than BYU right now. But it's not uncomplicated because the commits, I think we're told during the recruiting process that, hey, you're committing to play for Kyle Whittingham and eventually to play for Morgan Scalley. That might happen tomorrow. That might happen next year. What do you think the messaging on that, these final phone calls and things like that is, given the context of where Kyle Whittingham is at and where Utah's at with their coaching situation?
So, I don't know how many players commit, for a head coach versus a position coach versus just a program, a vibe, the money. Like, if you're a quarterback, a running back, you're probably not committing solely because of Kyle Whittingham, right? You're committing because you like the OC and you like the system and what it produces and whatnot. And if the OC stays, which seems likely, obviously, are you going to leave because Kyle Whittingham is gone? I mean, possible, right? So anything's possible, Sean. But I am curious about that. Like, how many players are committing only because the head coach, if the head coach leaves, they're just out. They're out, especially with money involved now, right? Where, NIL money, if it's the most money that's important to you, that doesn't change because the coach is no longer there. So I'm curious about that. When I committed to Oregon, I probably would have stayed if Bellotti left because I like the offensive line coach and the people I met there. But that's so long ago. I could just guess right now. But I don't know if it's going to matter that much.
I think it won't because I really do believe that this succession plan, the transition of power, has been explained as much as it can be without a definitive timeline to anyone who's interested. I mean, if you're coming to take a job for Utah football, as Jason Beck did and Marcotte Tawaya did and Simon did, the guys that were brought in to run the offense this year, like they were brought in with the full understanding that they're probably not working for Kyle Whittingham if they stay more than 2 years. You know what I mean? So I think everyone around the program has been told some version of that, but it's hard to really get a full sense of how much an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old is understanding that at this moment,
So Kyle, you think it's done, right?
I think it's done. I would say 100% if speaking in absolutes wasn't a huge mistake. I've been saying 99.9 because I just think it's a matter of time. And he does have some caveat, this thing they put in where the university has to be told by Friday. I don't think that means a public announcement, but the university has to know by Friday.
Yeah, obviously, I think we all agree the emotions he showed there to end the 2 games ago, right? The game against Kansas State felt like a coach that was probably about to retire. I'm curious about recruiting. I would imagine that the recruits know enough, right, to make a decision on what to do tomorrow. So, but I'm curious about how that conversation would have gone and what happens to some of these recruits now.
Kyle Whittingham is a dude who he's so beaten potatoes that he doesn't want the fond farewell. It's annoying because everyone wants to give him the fond farewell and wants to give him the standing ovation.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to end up in the Vegas Bowl, so I don't know how much people would travel to something like that. But do you think when you're talking about a coach who's 21 years in, I don't know the right way to phrase this because does he owe it to the fan base? Doesn't make sense. But is the appropriate way to handle, is the best way to handle it for Kyle Whittingham to make an announcement before the bowl game, let everyone know this is it. This is my last one. If you want to be there, if you want to tune in, you're never going to see me on this sideline again. He has told us he's just going to show up one day and then not the next. But it feels like if I'm close to him, if there's family, they should be telling him, no. Go out with a little bit of ceremony here. Is that right, or am I just sentimental?
I mean, he probably should go out with a little ceremony, but I don't think he's going to.
I don't think so either.
I think that would be the right way to honor him for what he's done for the program, but I don't think he's gonna to want that. I mean, if he wanted that, he would have announced it already, and they would have spent senior night honoring him, right? That's something he would have if he really wanted that adulation and that he would have done the tour to end the year, right? When he goes everywhere, like to Jared Jeter, you show up at every ballpark and everyone gives you a gift, which I find very funny, but that actually happened. Like Kobe did that, Jeter did that, Rivera did that, where they just got a gift in every city. It's okay, why? But sure.
Yeah.
That's what he would have done if he really wanted that attention. And it's not who he is. Do you think he will be a guy that comes around the program still?
I think that he's going to have some type of advisory, golden parachute role in the athletic department.
Yeah, like Mike Bellotti did. He was the AD for 2 years, and that was
yeah.
I get that.
I think he's going to do that to combat his boredom until he figures out how much, pickleball and tennis and golf and skiing he's going to be doing.
Some Harley riding and stuff.
I don't know. It's funny because I've talked about this with so many different people. I don't know how much on the air. Where I could see Kyle Whittingham retiring and going absolutely insane watching football and not being part of football and being like, all right, I'm going to go coach a high school team or something. And I could also see him being like, I'm never turning on football ever again for the rest of my life. Like, I did it. I've done it. I walked away at the right time. And, I'm just going to go work out for the rest the next 40 years because he's an interesting enough guy that he could probably find the hobbies and add to the ones he already has. But he's also such a football dude that I don't know what else there is that really, really, stirs the drink for him.
You have to bring him on every week for like a Kyle Whittingham segment.
It would be so good. It'd be so. I would love so much to have Coach come on every week, like every Thursday or something, and just be like, "All right, best player you ever coached," and just have him talk. But I don't know if we'll be able to pull that off.
Just like just weekly breakdowns.
That'd be good. It'd be
Speaking
awesome.
of that, what's happened to your defense?
You tell me.
I don't know. I'm not. I ain't paying attention like that. I just
why against Kansas State can they run inside power for 375 yards?
I texted you during your last game. I was like, oh, you can throw down the field. So that's how much I was watching your who do you Kansas your Kansas game. I had Kansas plus 11, so that's where my mind was at. We covered. Kansas got home though.
Well, I told you. Jeff texted me during the game. When Utah got the ball back, he was like, "Utah's going to get the ball back here, and they're gonna try and score." I was like, "No,
you already did that once this year against Wyoming."
I said they won't do it because Kyle Whittingham he sat down and he said, "I don't believe in running up the score or humiliating anyone," and the game was decided. All you had to do was kneel it down. I wanted Wayshawn Parker, the running back, was 5 yards away from 100 yards. To go 5 games in a row at 100 yards. I'm like, give him one more direct snap and see if he can get in. But they don't care about that kind of stuff.
But you
only
did
stat
exactly
that matters
against
is win.
Wyoming, though. You covered against Wyoming late. Remember, I had Wyoming, and you covered. Was Wyoming this year when you could have taken a knee, but your fourth string scored a touchdown in 4 plays?
Well, you're trying to get the young guys reps at that moment.
Oh, okay.
And also, I think there was an acknowledgement that hey, we've missed the playoff. Right? Against Kansas, you're like, yeah, we won this game, but the style points matter, and we didn't do that last week or this week.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Are you rooting for chaos and a BYU win for just the chaos factor of this, or are you rooting for Texas Tech just because you don't like BYU?
Well, you're forcing me to recognize this publicly. I am rooting for BYU to win that game because I have a lot of respect for the staff.
Okay.
I know a lot of these coaches personally. I have friends on that staff, and I want to see them, win a championship.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. You probably would have admitted that by Friday. I just got out of you today.
Yeah. I don't like that you did because now people aren't going to listen from Tuesday to Friday.
Well, I'm glad I'm helping your ratings as usual. Whatever you get from this disappears immediately. I gotta go.
Go get on your other call.
I'm 2 minutes late. Bye, buddy.
All right, see you, Jeff Schwartz, Football Insider. That's funny. So this is the factor that national exposure creates. Jeff Schwartz has very little vested interest in BYU athletics, but suddenly BYU athletics, BYU football, because of this coaching situation, is now front of mind for people even in North Carolina. Does that help BYU in the college football playoff rankings? We'll talk about it next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. I want to say thank you to any Utah fans that are still listening to the show today, because I know we've spent a lot of time talking about BYU's coaching situation, but it is right now the biggest story. They're headed to the championship game this week, and we have no idea, truthfully, whether Kalani Sitake is going to be on a plane out of Arlington to State College, Pennsylvania, or if he's going to be coming back on Allegiant Airways to Provo. We really don't know. One thing that is interesting right now is the attention being paid to this as it relates to the national media, the national decision makers, and, of course, the college football playoff rankings. Because there's a lot of people who think BYU's resume should have them in. The Big 12's reputation probably hurts them. Of course, they can win the conference championship game and make the whole point moot, but that doesn't feel like the most likely outcome. Also, now you've got the distraction situation put in here. But is there any such thing as bad publicity? Because BYU is being talked about right now, including on the Dan Patrick Show, where Steve Young joined and talked about this, Kalani Sitake and the interest Penn State is showing.
The pain would be pretty extreme. I suspect that everything's being done on the other side to try to make sure that everything gets, that he stays. But I guess in some ways, Dan, it's cool that Penn State wants our coach. I think that's a cool thing too, in some ways. So I mean, but don't be confused. It would be, they're going to have to rip him from our bloody hands. That's the kind of way I think about it.
So to hear Steve Young saying that is phenomenal. Except if you're sitting on the board of that college football playoff committee, and whether you get an announcement or not, you believe that Kalani Sitake is not going to be part of BYU's short and long-term future, you are going to punish BYU for it. They're already punishing BYU for things that BYU can't control, like the fact that they're BYU. BYU is the lowest-ranked one-loss team in the modern football era. Since a 4-team playoff was put in place, BYU is the lowest-ranked one-loss team at the end of the regular season ever.
Well, I was going to make a joke about Florida State missing the playoff, but they were still ranked higher than BYU is now.
They were ranked a lot higher than BYU. And by the way, that was BS.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, going back to the Steve Young clip, did you hear the things being done on the other side? He's not talking about, the Lord's on our side there.
I know.
No, he's not.
No.
You never know with BYU, OC. You just never know.
Here's the deal. BYU, I'm by the moment growing more and more convinced of this. BYU has a problem that can only be fixed by Tom Homo coming out of retirement for about 12 minutes. That man is a wizard. Sometimes he actually dressed up as a wizard for Halloween a couple of times.
Man, the Halloween costumes, legendary.
This would not be an issue if Tom Homo was still in place at BYU. Kalani Sitake and Tom Homo were in lockstep, hand in hand on a lot of different things. There was a lot of trust between them. There was a deep understanding because Tom Homo, raise your hand if you remember that Tom Homo was a head college football coach before he was an athletic director. Tom Homo has an intimate understanding of how difficult just that job is, and because of his allegiances to BYU, his understanding of the culture, his understanding of the honor code, his understanding of the politics, he was uniquely equipped to understand what his head football coach dealt with, including how that head coach has to handle other job interests and offers while his team is preparing for an important game. Tom Homo wouldn't know exactly about how to prepare for all those things when he's going to a conference championship game because he never had that level of success as a head coach, but he would know all sides of the negotiation. he'd be able to pick up the phone and call Penn State and just be like, what's your offer really, you jerks? What are you trying to do to get my coach? Relationships are so critically important. And every source that I have talked to about this has said there's a relationship issue. There's a lack of trust. There's a lack of rapport when it comes to BYU's new athletic director and Kalani Sitake and the promises that he is asking to have made. Now, you got to give Brian Santiago credit because it seems like on the relationships with the big booster front and the basketball front, he's got it all dialed in. On the football side, there is work that needs to be done clearly here. If you're BYU and you want this college football playoff committee to even consider you as a possibility, should BYU not win, let's say BYU loses an overtime game by a field goal in the Big 12 championship, they absolutely deserve to be in a 12-team football playoff. The only chance of that is if Kalani Sitake is still your head coach. Think of that. You are in a situation right now at BYU where Kalani getting the extension he wants could be the difference between you being in a college football playoff right now or not. It would be unlikely. It would be difficult, but it's the only hope. I also think that if you don't get an announcement before the conference championship game, you have zero chance of winning that game. If there is not signing day is its own animal, but if there's not a decision made and a deal signed and an extension announced, when the team gets on the plane to Arlington, that team is not beating Texas Tech, guys.
Because what about Jay Hill?
All those players are going to be like, dude, what?
Yeah.
We're really going down here to this championship game, and either Kalani isn't loyal to us or the school is not loyal to Kalani or whatever thought you have as a player, you're just like, the adults in the room are not doing me justice here. If I'm a player and my head coach, who's got me to this point, can't get what he needs from the school. I'm more and more convinced that the timing of this is absolutely critical for BYU. And if you can't get it done, you can't get it done. But, man, what an absolute failure that would be by the school and the athletic department. And I'm not saying that from a point of excitement or pride. I would actually, in a weird way, in a backward way, I would be, even though it's better for Utah, it is. If Kalani Sitake leaves, it's better for Utah because he takes at least a few players from BYU. He takes at least a few good coaches from BYU, and then that gets watered down. That product gets watered down. Jay Hill will probably have it back to where it needs to be within a couple of seasons, but temporarily it's going to get watered down. That's good for Utah. But weirdly, I don't want to see Utah beat BYU because of BYU's failures or the failures of its leadership. I want to see Utah beat BYU because Utah's better.
You have too much pride for that.
It's like you don't want to see his self-inflicted wounds for BYU be the reason that Utah gets back on top of them in football, right? You want it to be because, hey, we played harder, we're better, we executed. Congratulations, rivalry game. This was fun. You had your 3 in a row. Now we're going to start our own little streak again. Let's go.
Yeah, it's similar to – I know that BYU and the fan base and internally over there, they don't necessarily feel this way about this year's rivalry game, the way that they won, and they shouldn't. You should feel good about winning no matter what. But from Utah's perspective and the Utah fan base perspective, Utah lost that game more than BYU won, right? That there's a lot of people that feel that way. I know that you feel that way when it comes to the coaching decisions of that game. It's kind of in that way, like maybe that's not how BYU feels about this game and their fan base feels about this year's game, but that you would rather it that the other team was awesome and made the right decisions and didn't turn the ball over and all the self-inflicted wounds like you talk about, and you still came out on top. Then you'll take the win no matter what, but then what kind of from Utah's perspective, what happened in this year's game where it's like, questionable decisions, field goal, not field goal, some turnovers. That's how you won, right? You'd rather it be a different way.
You would. Like if you win a big game because, well, I mean, people were attacking Utah with this. You smashed Arizona State because they didn't have Sam Levitt. That win feels a lot better if they had Sam Levitt, right? And that narrative went away because Utah continued to dominate, and they smashed a good Cincinnati team who was at full strength and all that kind of stuff. So that narrative went away. But, well, I guess it's why the committee didn't put Florida State in when their resume said you should, because it was like, well, whoever beats Florida State is going to be beating a Florida State team that isn't at full strength. You want to defeat your rival when your rival is at its best. So you can say, oh, yeah, you're richer than us. You're just as talented as we are now. And we still beat you. That's what you want. Utah's wins over BYU in the Mountain West Conference was a more even playing field and more gratifying than Utah's wins when BYU was an independent and more of a group of 5 talent pool, and you were in the Pac-12.
Yeah, even though the games were all one-score games.
Yeah, they're still great games.
You still felt like Utah, the fan base certainly felt like, and probably internally felt like, hey, like we just beat on a team that's lower than us.
And the NFL draft kept reinforcing that point to you. And yes, I know as a Utah fan, you enjoyed that, but I promise you, you're going to feel even better about it if Utah beats a good BYU team. You know how much fun we would have been having if Utah finished out that game at Rice-Eccles Stadium last season when BYU's end-of-the-year product looked so much better than Utah's, but every Utah fan could be like, oh, yeah, you're so good, but we still beat you. You're having one of the best seasons you can remember, but we still beat you. That's what you want. I don't want to see BYU's athletic department fail and let Kalani Sitake walk, and that's why Utah gets back on top. I want to see Utah dominate BYU by dominating BYU, not a diminished product. That's just me, though. You, as a fan, get to have whatever opinion of that that you want.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're already being flooded with texts, as we typically are, that are like, no matter how we do it, it's always amazing beating BYU, which is absolutely fair too.
16-24, this is so great. I could have immediate family and my best friends on BYU staff and still want them to lose every game. That's fine. If that's how you feel, that's fine.
16-24 might have been the one when I talked about my grandpa passing last year and how, hey, this is cool that BYU's undefeated and have a chance to continue to be undefeated. And he said there was a texter. I got a huge chuckle out of it. Might have been him. Might have been 16-24. Might have been someone else that said something similar in that chance too. It's like, hey, so-and-so in my family's a huge BYU fan. I still would never want them to win. You got to love the rivalry.
All right. Got to take a break here. What are we giving away next here, James? Let's have a little bit of fun. Evanescence! Wake me up inside. Do you even know that song? Are you young enough?
Love that song.
All right.
Yeah. So you know what I think of when I hear that song?
What?
The Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. Have you seen that one?
It's a terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie.
It's so
Jennifer
bad.
Garner as she becomes Elektra.
Jennifer Garner, not terrible.
Yeah. As she becomes, it shows her like learning how to fight and stuff, and that's the song. That's the montage.
That's the training montage song.
So
you can always count on James Peterson for an obscure movie pull. He's excellent at that. 2 Evanescence tickets with a trivia question next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. Yeah, you know this song. Evanescence is coming to Salt Lake City. We have tickets to give away. Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater next July. 2 tickets to Evanescence. We talked about the big hit from Monday Night Football, Jackson Dart and and Christian Ellis. It was a collision, literal collision between two worlds that are associated with Utah. It was great to see. If you know off the top of your head where Christian Ellis was drafted, 877-353-0700. I will give you 2 Evanescence tickets. 877-353-0700. Where was Christian Ellis drafted? Everyone knows where Jackson Dart was taken. Where was Christian Ellis drafted? Spence Checketts in the Drive coming up next. Hi, Spence.
I will be doing my show standing up today.
Oh, really? Why?
Because I'm an old person. And when you're an old person, just a part of your body just decides like it's my turn to just like hurt for no reason. So I woke up today, back is completely done. Did I tell you my right pinky was swollen for 3 months for no reason?
That's gout.
It's not, thank you. But it was the right pinky was like, hey, I've never hurt before. And guess what? It's my turn.
You got the gout.
I have no gout. Okay, take it back. There's no gout going on. Isn't that a foot thing anyway? Can that be a hand thing?
Yeah, it's. I think it's all joints.
Well, it's fine now, but it's just like I woke up one day and the pinky was like, hey, I'm swollen for the next 3 months, FYI. And so now it's my back. I will be doing the show standing up. Nobody cares, but I just wanted to get that out there.
Okay, well, thoughts and prayers.
Excellent show today by you.
Thank you.
I heard your first segment, which I rarely get to do because I'm really not in the car at that point, but I had a bunch of errands today. And, you made this point a few different times. And I don't know Brian Santiago. He came on our show during Big 12 Media Day, and I thought he was great. Gave us a good 20, 25 minutes. My 3 brothers and their sons do the BYU father and son basketball camp every year, and they say he's great to the group, The hire, as I understand it, was really made as a result of Brian's relationships with very powerful rich boosters. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you also heard, like, permeating throughout the storyline of him taking over for Tom, which is going to be tough because Tom will go down in history as probably the best athletic director that school has ever had, led them through tremendously troubled waters, left when the waters were calm and everything was good. But intertwined in that storyline was a lot of people kind of going, wait a second, this is the guy, meaning Brian? I can't speak to Kalani's relationship with Brian Santiago, but what I would say is this is a big moment for him. This is a big moment for Brian, who just inherited something that was in a good place and feels like it will be in a good place as long as you keep everything steady. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but I think this is a big moment for Brian Santiago. In order to quiet the voices that were skeptical about him getting the job in the first place.
You have to get this right. I mean, the same is true with every head coaching situation for every athletic director, but rarely, right? Usually when we're talking about an inflection point like this for athletic directors, we're talking about the previous coach failed, and you have to replace them with something better, right? That's where you make your name as an athletic director with football coaching. It's a really unique situation, and I think potentially more disastrous if you have a good thing going and you let it slip through your fingers, because there's no reason for it to happen. Kalani Sitake wants to stay loyal to BYU. He wants to. He hasn't told me that himself, but people who know him a lot better than I do, that I trust implicitly, are like, you don't have to pay him what Penn State's paying him.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, I've made the point several times, if money is the issue, that is not an excuse you can make at BYU.
Nope.
It just isn't.
Nope.
Being cheap for the sake of being cheap is not virtuous. Frugality for the sake of frugality and losing quality is not something that's good for your school, your program, your mission, whatever. Kalani is that dude. He is the right guy. That is without question. So if you don't get this extension done, and you should do it by tonight to save whatever recruits have committed for tomorrow. And if you don't get it done by the time the team gets on the plane to Arlington, you have failed. And, like, it's a fireable offense if you're anywhere else. I don't know if it is down there.
Yeah.
But if you let this guy walk when you have the money to keep him, you have his loyalty, and you're just like, I don't know if we can promise you that. I don't know if we want to pay your assistant coaches. Our guy Ben Criddle on our sister station retweeted this morning that former players are putting together a GoFundMe for BYU assistant coaches because they're so underpaid.
That's laughable, by the way. I saw that earlier.
If you're a fan of BYU athletics,
yeah,
you should be raging.
Yeah.
You should be like, I'm not renewing my season tickets if you're not paying our assistant coaches who have led us to back-to-back 11-win seasons market value.
If I'm Shane Reese, pardon me, C. Shane Reese, get the C out there. If I'm the president of BYU, or if I'm Brian Santiago, the athletic director, I'm calling the former players and be like, take that down.
It's a bad look.
Please don't. Stop it. Delete all the tweets, okay? Your GoFundMe is not helping this proposition. And this does really boil down to what the BYU model always has been. And obviously Lavelle was such a legend, but potentially Lavelle Edwards spoiled everybody by his own admission, because I had a chance to do some radio with Lavelle during the final portion of kind of his life. And it was a real treat to get to know him. And, do some radio with he and Mac together was really, really cool. And he said on a number of occasions, not just on the shows we were doing, but in other places, he never negotiated his contract. Never was like, how much money am I making? Can I make more? He just did the thing. And there's this underlying element with the business model of BYU where they've been able to employ coaches that believe so strongly in being a part of the mission that they don't really give a rip about being paid fair market value. They're like, no, I believe in this faith system. I believe in this culture so much. I just want to be a part of furthering the message. I want to be a part of building the empire. And so if you're not going to pay me what my peers make, it's fine, because I'm part of something much bigger than that. The belief is I'm part of something bigger than anything my bank account will reflect. The problem is what Kalani has done is shown everybody in America that he belongs in the conversation of not just one of the better coaches in the Big 12, but one of the better coaches in America. He's won 22 of his last 25 games. In his third year in the Big 12, he's going to play for a conference championship. They're on the precipice of making a CFP, which they've never done before. They're about to play the biggest game they've played in over 40 years. And so if you want to continue to be cheap, which is what you've been, if you want to continue to believe in this model, and look, there are a lot of LDS business people that believe in this similar model where it's like, we don't have to pay top dollar for talent. We're just going to move somebody over into your seat, and we believe we can get the same results because we believe in our culture. We believe in the BYU experience. So if Kalani's going to cost us $11 million, we'll just pay Jay Hill $3 million and slide him over a seat and save the $7 or $8 million. That feels like the model that they've kind of always leaned into. They did it with basketball and Dave Rose back in the day when Dave basically slid over a seat after being assistant. The problem is the game has changed, and Kalani has put himself in a stratosphere where he deserves to be paid alongside of his peers. Is he demanding to be the highest paid coach in the Big 12? I seriously doubt that.
He's not, because, he's realistically, no one is saying we'll pay him what Deion's making at almost $11 million a year at Colorado. No one's saying that.
Yeah, and I doubt that's anything he would demand. But if the reports are true that Kalani's making between $3 and $4 million, he has worked his way into an economic stratosphere that he deserves at least triple that,
If
right?
he's making $6 million, he's underpaid.
Correct. So if you're BYU, you have a decision to make. Do you want to modernize your approach? Do you want to be part of the big dogs? Do you want to pay your coaches what they deserve for once in your program's history? And by the way, you already did it with your basketball coach. So to your point, don't tell me the money's not there, because nobody's buying that. And, even if you ever wanted the answer to the question, what does a cookie look like as a human? The Crumble CEO rolls in. Tell me that dude doesn't look like a cookie.
He's getting off the sidelines and getting this thing across the finish line.
As the kids would say, a little cringe. Okay, a little extra. Doing a little too much.
I like it.
No, I like it if I'm a BYU fan. Step up, Cookie Man. But when I saw his picture, I'm like, if I was ever curious as to what a sugar cookie looks like as a person, it's that dude. He looks like a cookie. And he's saving the day.
That's not even an insult
it's
to me.
Not. Who doesn't like a cookie? It's not an insult.
I want to look like a cookie.
But when I saw the tweet, I hit his profile. I'm like, that's the CEO of Crumble for sure. But you have to have players like this. It really is the most BYU story of all time, where you're about to lose your coach, and then the sugar cookie bro steps in and is like, hey, guys, I got this. No worries. Fascinated to see how this ends. Great job today covering it.
I'm sure Spence Checketts will talk about it a little bit more on his show, and that starts in 3 minutes. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN.